Chapter 1240. Captain Tan. Before Bai Yunj could finish speaking, Tan Nan interrupted her. Go back to Yun University as soon as possible. Captain Lu is fine. Before Bai Yunj could respond, she heard Tan Nan say leisurely, but you have to clean the toilet for 3 months. Bai Yunj was speechless. She remembered that Lu Zhongzhou's sense of smell was extremely sensitive. For Lu Zhongzhou, this kind of work was not as good as being beaten up. Got it. Bai Yunj answered. After the farewell party in the evening, she took the bus back to Yun University. However, she did not expect to receive a call from Zhong Xinglin the moment she returned to Yun University. Yunj, the robot for the Gemini system is completed. Zhong Xinglin sounded pleasantly surprised. It was obvious that he did not expect to be able to create such a high-level AI robot one day. Bai Yunj's lips curled up. I'll go and take a look tonight. From the moment she entered the computing institute, Bai Yunj had been preparing the AI robot for the Gemini system. Because of the scarcity of materials, the progress had been very slow. And now, this was indeed the only thing that Bai Yunj wanted to confirm the most. Sure, you can set up your personal account, Zhong Xinglin said with a smile. At the computing institute, Bai Yunj walked into the research lab and saw a palm-sized disk spinning on the table. There was even a ring on the table. Yunj, this is the top AI robot in the country. Congratulations. Zhong Xinglin could not help but sigh. Even Zhong Xinglin had never thought that he would be able to see such a level of AI one day. Looks like he's pretty stupid. Bai Yunj reached out and gently flicked the small disk that was spinning excitedly. The small disk stopped and the camera met Bai Yunj's eyes, analyzing her personal data. Bai Yunj started to operate it. After the small robot was on standby, a virtual keyboard appeared. Soon, she set up the password program. She restarted it again. The small disk had already been connected to the Gemini system on Bai Yunj's computer. A young girl's mechanical voice sounded. Master, I'm robot number 001, little G, nice to meet you. Bai Yunj raised his eyebrows and said with a smile, it looks good now. After that, Bai Yunj picked up the ring and slowly put it on her index finger. She smiled at Zhong Xinglin. Thank you, old master. I'm relieved that you have the Gemini AI by your side. During this period of time, the international situation had not been peaceful. 2 well-known researchers from K country had gone missing. A researcher from S country also died in an accident on the plane 2 days ago, Zhong Xinglin said with a frown. Bai Yunj asked, are they all in the computing field? That's right, Zhong Xinglin had a complicated look in his eyes. It's very likely that the next one will be us. But don't worry, not many people know of your existence now. Bai Yunj lowered her gaze and said, I'm in school and I don't need anyone to protect me. Let Captain Tan and the rest come to the computing institute. How can we do that? Old master, if you go missing, I'll have to inherit the computing institute in advance. Bai Yunj teased indifferently. However, Zhong Xinglin was shocked when he thought of this. It wasn't easy for Country A to produce a super genius. They definitely couldn't let her die here. However, in the end, Zhong Xinglin couldn't persuade Bai Yunj and could only let the wolf hunting team stay at the computing institute first. After returning, Bai Yunj was also at CI7 and the chaos beings to find out what was going on. However, she didn't expect that the 2 sides would give her 2 completely different answers. Chapter 1241. CI7 found that these accidents were caused by someone. And the culprits were most likely the people Bai Yunj had fought within G University. Those people broke into G University's security system for the final results of the G University's genetics professor. However, the answer given to Bai Yunj by the chaosists was completely different. The chaosists believed that this accident was related to our country's politics. There was a very famous female politician in our country, Moira. She had always advocated for a strong country and even advocated for a national war. However, almost no one agreed with Moira's political theories over the years, so she had always been suppressed. However, until this year, when Moira's husband, who was also a politician, died, many of Moira's husband's supporters supported Moira. This caused a turmoil in our country. However, Xian Yuan did not talk about this with Bai Yunj. After all, they did not participate in such sensitive topics. After Bai Yunj returned, she thought of these two different answers and a trace of thought flashed past her eyes. Morning. Borderless town. There were two old men in the dungeon. Their hair was white, and their bodies were covered in injuries. Their hands and feet were tied, and a piece of cloth was stuffed in their mouths. They were the two missing researchers from K country. In front of the two researchers stood a slender man. He was wearing an expensive suit and shiny leather shoes. His movements were elegant and light. It was a strong contrast to the atmosphere in the dungeon. Both of you, I don't like to have blood on my hands, but my patience is limited. Are you really not going to talk to me about what happened 20 years ago? The man's tone was light, and there was no smile in his peach blossom eyes. Even when he curled his thin red lips, his gaze was indifferent. However, if Bai Yunj was here, she would definitely recognize at a glance that this was the man who coaxed her last night and insisted that she leave school to live with him. The two researchers trembled. When they thought of what happened 20 years ago, they subconsciously closed their eyes, as if there was a knife on their backs. They had devoted their lives to research and had never done anything wrong. However, 20 years ago, in order to survive, they lost the life of a woman. You. Who are you? After taking away the cloth in their mouths, one of them asked weakly, but he also had a natural fear of the man in front of him. The man sneered. Is this a question you should be thinking about? The two men's faces were ashen, but their hearts were filled with fear. They were afraid that if they said it out loud, the reputation they had built up over the years would be destroyed. They were even more afraid that even if they said it, this man would not let them go. One of them stammered, "You want to know what happened 20 years ago?" "What? You don't know?" "Let me give you a hint, Hu Jing." As soon as the man finished speaking, their pupils shrank and they looked at him abruptly. It was because of Hu Jing. But what was the relationship between this man and Hu Jing? To actually lock them up in such a place and interrogate them, Hushida glanced at Zhou Yu, who knocked on the door and entered. Then, he slowly wiped the blood off his hands. "This is the last night. I'll leave it to you to think about how to answer me tomorrow." He raised his peach blossom eyes and the curve of his lips was a little cold. "But if I'm not satisfied with your answers, I'll let you out." At this moment, the two researchers had no time to think about why this temperamental man was willing to let them go. As for whether the two of you can leave Kansoni village alive, that will depend on your luck. End of chapter. Chapter 1242. Hearing this, the two researchers' faces turned pale. Kansan village? Wasn't this the town where Hu Jing died? In a borderless town like Kansan village, what everyone said about a place without laws and resembling hell was real. The only rule of survival in this town was to kill. Some people would fight with drugs for money. Some people would kill for women. Some people would have no choice but to raise a sharp knife in order to survive. Please. Please take us out and give us a way out. When the two of them heard this, they immediately panicked and kept kowtowing to the man in front of them. But at this moment, the man ignored their humble begging and turned to walk out of the dungeon. What happened? Hushidu asked calmly. Zhou Yu could not help but look at Hushidu. He wanted to say something but hesitated. Someone has investigated us, Master Du, you want me to handle this matter? Hushidu glanced at him from the corner of his eyes with a faint smile. Zhou Yu said, Master Du, it seems to be Miss Pei who got someone to investigate you. As soon as he finished speaking, the atmosphere suddenly quietened down. Have you found out? The man asked. Zhou Yu shook his head. I think only a little. How could Miss Pei easily discover the trap that Master Du had set up for so many years? The man took out a cigarette from the cigarette box and lit it. He bit it and said in a low and lazy voice, It's indeed a little troublesome. Why don't we mislead Miss Pei? Zhou Yu asked carefully. If Miss Pei found out about this, it would not be good for her. Instead, he did not know what Miss Pei's attitude towards Master Du would be if she found out. Why should I lie to her? The man's posture was casual. He held a cigarette between his fingers and suddenly looked up. Let her investigate. If this child thought that he was deliberately hiding it from her, it would not be easy to coax her. Zhou Yu was speechless. All along, so many people had investigated Master Du's background. When had Master Du ever let these nosy people off? But this time, the person investigating him was Miss Pei. Master Du, on the other hand, was lying flat and letting people investigate carefully. They could only hope that Miss Pei was not too interested in their plan. Otherwise, was Miss Pei really not afraid of what Master Du was going to do next? Yin University. Classes for new students began, and at the same time, the student union and clubs began to recruit new members. As soon as Bei Yunj entered the dormitory, she saw several department heads surrounding her. Student Pei, join our public relations department. This is definitely the best choice for you. Don't listen to her, Junior. There are a lot of handsome guys in our sports department. The number of new recruits has always been very small. No. Our internet department is more suitable. Bei Yunja's eyelids began to twitch when she heard 4 or 5 senior sisters swarming over to snatch the conversation. Obviously, Wei Jimin did not succeed in stopping this group of people from harassing her. No, I'm not interested. Good night everyone. After Bei Yunj finished speaking, she quickly closed the door of the dormitory. All the department heads and deputy department heads outside, the top scholar's father's temper was too difficult to deal with. At this very moment, everyone in the dormitory was envious. These department heads and deputy department heads were usually the center of attention. How could they take the initiative to strike up a conversation with others? However, she didn't expect that she would be rejected by Bei Yunj when she took the initiative to visit them today. Bei Yunj, are you really not going to consider the club? This will be a network in the future. Du Mingting could not help but ask. Bei Yunj did not even look up. Yes. Chapter 1243. The others, speaking of arrogance, this person was indeed the first to bear the brunt. Hai Ning suddenly stood up to open the door and handed the completed form to the minister with a smile. Minister Su, this is my registration form. I hope to help in your department in the future. Minister Su was more or less angered by Bei Yunj's attitude. Then he glanced at Bei Yunj, sneered, and directly took Hai Ning's registration form. No problem, Hai Ning, your score is considered high in the physics department. Don't worry, as long as I'm here, you will be able to access the best resources in the school. After Minister Su finished speaking, he left arrogantly. Hai Ning's eyes flashed with a touch of darkness. She unconsciously curled the corners of her lips and glanced at Bei Yunj with a bit of sarcasm. She didn't know whether this Bei Yunj was really stupid or pretending to be noble. Did she really think that the connections of the student union were useless? Minister Su was a laboratory student of Professor Huang Zui in the physics department. With Minister Su, she would soon be in the first batch of students to enter the laboratory of Professor Huang. However, if it weren't for Bei Yunj's arrogant attitude, Minister Su wouldn't be so good to her. Thinking of this, Hai Ning's mood became better. The next day, in the territory of the Kansani tribe, 2 older men were tied up. A burly man nearly 2 meters tall, carrying one in each hand, was walking towards the door. At this moment, the road was full of chaos as usual. Some people were fighting in the street and even biting each other's ears off. As for this scene, the passers-by felt as if they were watching a circus performance and quickly left with relish. The 2 great researchers, who had always been gentle, saw the passers-by playing with knives and chewing human flesh outside. At this moment, they were staring at them with malicious eyes and evil smiles. Their inner defenses completely collapsed. I'll say it. Please, let us live. I'll say it too. I'm begging you, please take us in. At this moment, the passers-by who had just fiercely bitten people's ears suddenly rushed towards the burly man holding the two people in his hands. Unexpectedly, the burly man raised his leg and directly kicked the passers-by in the chest. The next moment, the passerby crashed into the wall on the other side, and the sound of bones cracking was clear and terrifying. As for the old beggar who had been wandering on the side of the street, he looked thin and weak. Suddenly, as if he had gone mad, he pounced on the passerby and slashed at his chest with his knife. He grabbed the meat with his hands and ate it. The scene was nauseating. "Why didn't you say so earlier?" Zhou Yu smiled and didn't even spare a glance at the chaos on the street. Instead, he had the burly man bring the man back. In the dungeon, Zhou Yu politely poured a cup of tea for the two of them and chuckled. "My master said that he had offended the two of you when he brought you back. Please don't take offense. Okay, now can you tell me how Miss J.H. died?" Immediately, the two of them shuddered. However, they didn't want to become food for those living ghouls. He Jingshan closed his eyes. "It's Ji Linling. Back then, he was the one who gathered all of us together. He was also the one who took away Hua Jing's final research manuscript. At that time, Hua Jing accidentally found out that they were doing research on mutants. The consequences of this research were likely to threaten the survival of mankind. At that time, they were still too young and ambitious, thinking that they could control the research on mutants in their hands. However, Hua Jing firmly opposed it and took out his own theory in an attempt to make it public. End of this chapter. Chapter 1244. Hua Jing's scientific research ability could be said to be terrifying, and he had too many believers both inside and outside the circle. And her theory described the advantages and disadvantages of mutant research in detail. If it really caused a sensation, then their 10 years of hard work would all be wasted. Therefore, at that time, Ji Linling wanted to kill Hua Jing for the results of the experiment. They ignored it and even added fuel to the fire to let Ji Linling get rid of Hua Jing. They tampered with Hua Jing's theory and published it in the international scientific research community to make more people believe that their experiment was beneficial to mankind. But unexpectedly, in the end, because of this experiment, nearly an entire island of people died. Fortunately, at that time, they took into account the danger that Hua Jing had mentioned and only conducted the experiment on a relatively sparsely populated island. But that was still thousands of lives. They kept their mouths shut about the results of that experiment, and Ji Linling used the dead Hua Jing as a scapegoat. They pushed all the blame onto a dead person. As a result, Hua Jing was forever removed from the scientific research community. However, they survived well and enjoyed the fame and fortune in the industry. In the eyes of the public, they were highly respected people who almost sacrificed their lives for scientific research. There were more than 30 big shots who participated in that mutant research, but only 7 survived in the end. One of them even died in a plane crash a while ago. After Zhou Yu finished recording these things from 20 years ago, he couldn't help pursing his lips. Soldiers were born for the nation, then researchers were born for mankind. They could use technology to research and advance human civilization, but they could also easily use experiments to destroy all mankind. If it wasn't for Hua Jing, then whichever country that experiment was done in might have led to the destruction of the country. "Do you still have Miss J.H.'s manuscript?" Zhou Yu asked. This was the name that Hua Jing had always used to publish articles and experiment results. He Jingshan and Zhou Yu looked at each other. Then, he took a deep breath. The manuscript might be in the hands of Moira, a member of parliament in our nation. She was a famous female politician in our nation. "I have a copy." He Xionghui suddenly said, "As long as you let us go, I'll give it to you." "Professor He, why do you think you're here?" Zhou Yu laughed. "Or let me rephrase my question. Guess why the person in S Nation crashed?" Suddenly, He Jingshan and Zhou Yu's hairs stood on end. "What do you mean?" Zhou Yu continued, "Even if I send you out of this place, you will still die. Someone is buying the lives of the 7 of you." After saying this, He Jingshan felt a chill run down his spine, but at the same time, it was as if he had suddenly woken up. Is it Ji Linling? Or Moira? Ha 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 ha, I knew it. I knew it. Karma reincarnation. How long can I be alone? He Jingshan's eyes were filled with tears. I want to live. I beg you, I'll listen to you forever, don't let me die. After He Xionghui regained his senses, he immediately kowtowed to Zhou Yu. Zhou Yu glanced at them calmly, but there was a trace of disgust in his eyes. There were also such scums in the scientific research community. If you want to live, tell me where Miss J.H.'s research papers are. He Xionghui took a deep breath again and smiled miserably. The library in laboratory number 191. I entered a copy into the computer system. Library, Zhou Yu remembered something. Didn't Miss Pei take all the manuscripts in laboratory 191's library? End of chapter. Chapter 1245. Zhou Yu was speechless. Why did everything have to do with Miss Pei? The more Zhou Yu thought about it, the more his scalp went numb. What if Miss Pei did not agree with Master Du's plan and even stood against him? At that time, the person who stabbed Master Du in the end would be Miss Pei. Master Du would probably go crazy. Zhou Yu was at his wit's end, but Huashidu was really willing to hand his life over to Bai Yunj. At Yun University. Are you done? Bai Yunj was impatient. Si Qingyan was used to it, but the graduate students that Si Qingyan brought along were stunned. Where did this freshman come from? How could she speak to Professor Si like that? Don't rush me. How old are you? Can you have some patience? Si Qingyan was using Bai Yunj's robot to collect information with an envious expression. What kind of brain did this guy have? He actually made such a robot for her. Bai Yunj was expressionless as she continued to flip through the manuscripts she had brought back from Laboratory 191. After a while, just as Bai Yunj was engrossed in reading, Si Qingyan appeared beside her. What are you looking at? J.H. Why haven't I heard of this scholar? Don't tell me you're reading some random book. Bai Yunj glanced at him leisurely. In another 20 years, you might not be as good as her. Si Qingyan was speechless. It was really strange that this person could have friends. Bai Yunj was indeed quite interested in this J.H. She was also quite surprised that there was no information about J.H. in the industry. He had always felt that this J.H. was an extraordinary person. He was extremely strong in all aspects, including his ideals and accomplishments. Then can you lend it to me to take a look? Si Qingyan asked, unwilling to give up. Bai Yunj took back the documents and looked at Si Qingyan quietly. She used a familiar tone to persuade him gently, Brother Yan, you won't understand this. Si Qingyan was speechless. F***CK, where did his knife go? You've been working on a project for a year? Bai Yunj asked. Si Qingyan was speechless. What else? If they were like you, they would have won the K.Z. Busaka Award after working for 2 or 3 months. Pei Zai, if you don't know how to speak, you'd better shut up. Si Qingyan went back to work on the project. Bai Yunj's eyelids twitched. If you keep me here, what about my physics class? You still need them to teach you physics? Si Qingyan chuckled. Then there must be some kind of homework, right? Bai Yunj asked. Si Qingyan nodded lightly as he buried his head in the experiment. Yes, Professor Huang from your faculty likes to assign big homework. He basically does it once a week. At the beginning of the freshman, maybe once every 2 weeks. Bai Yunj took a deep breath and asked coldly, today is Friday of the 2nd week, right? Si Qingyan suddenly felt a chill down his spine. He had actually forgotten about this matter. That bald donkey surnamed Huang was a troublemaker. If Bai Yunj did not hand in her homework, Huang Zui might blow up the computer science department. Quick, quick, quick. Bai Yunj, go and hand in your homework. Bai Yunj instinctively stood up and walked out. Suddenly, she stopped in her tracks and turned to look at him. I don't know what homework is. Si Qingyan was speechless. After a while, Si Qingyan asked for the homework and asked Bei Yunj to do it in the laboratory quickly. The graduate students were jealous. When did Professor C become so easy to talk to and even let someone do homework in the laboratory? End of this chapter. Chapter 1246. In fact, the graduate students even heard Professor C praising Bei Yunj from the side and sighed. Yunj, you're quite fast at writing. I practiced writing self-reflection. Bei Yunj did not even look up. The graduate students were speechless. However, when they turned around, Professor C seemed to be possessed as he looked at Bei Yunj with admiration. The way the two of them interacted was completely different from that of a teacher and a student. Father Pei, write faster. Si Qingyan lowered his voice. If you can't hand in your homework, that old bald donkey, Huang Zui, might carry explosives and die with me. He did not dare to provoke that lunatic. Bei Yunj glanced at Si Qingyan coldly and sped up his writing. Professor Huang Zui had always insisted on not forgetting his words, so unless it was a complicated and difficult topic, he had to hand in his manuscript. Okay, I'm done. After Bei Yunj finished writing, he immediately went to the physics building to hand in his homework. However, he did not expect to see a sad student at Professor Huang's door. Student, you're handing in your homework too? The boy asked in surprise. Bei Yunj was speechless. It's the deadline. Professor Huang asked for it to be handed in at 2:30 p.m. It's 2:31 p.m. now. He won't accept it. The boy sighed, but after glancing at Bei Yunj, he gradually understood. Someone actually forgot to hand in their homework like him. Bei Yunj held the homework in his hand and thought for a moment. However, he did not expect the boy to think that Bei Yunj was sad and lonely because he did not hand in his homework on time. The boy comforted him generously and passionately. Come, student, don't immerse yourself in sadness. You have to know that our great college entrance examination top scholar once said that the past is the past. Reminiscing is just an incompetent escape. Facing reality is the norm in life. Bei Yunj said. I said that. This was the content of the self-reflection letter Bei Yunj had written. According to Lu Yuanci, it was hung in the exhibition board of Hengda High School and had not been torn down. The boy was speechless. You're the college entrance examination top scholar? The boy's eyes widened in disbelief. Bei Yunj lowered her cap. No wonder I haven't seen you before. Professor Huang has been very angry these days. You're the only one in class 1 who hasn't reported the progress of the big homework to him. The boy sighed and became even more excited. He was late in handing in his homework, but the father of the top scholar was actually the scapegoat? What kind of luck was this? Bei Yunj, not long after. Bei Yunj was just about to knock on the door when she saw Hai Ning walk out. She glanced at Bei Yunj indifferently and smiled. Are you here to hand in your homework? Professor Huang had already left. Also, Bei Yunj, you've been staying with Professor C for the past few days and didn't even hand in your homework. Professor Huang might not be so nice to you. After Hai Ning finished speaking, she took the recommendation form and walked out happily. Hearing this, before Bei Yunj could do anything, the boy beside her frowned and said, Student Pei, you should apologize to Professor Huang properly. Professor Huang and Professor C are famous for being sworn enemies. Be careful that he won't let you graduate. Bei Yunj, hearing this, Bei Yunj couldn't help but think about the possibility of killing Si Qingyan and appeasing the professor of their department. Also, I heard that you and the student at the bottom of the class were grouped together. The boy hesitated. The amount of homework at Yun University was famous for being overwhelming. Also, Bei Yunj hadn't been in class these days. No matter how hard she tried, she couldn't help others. Chapter 1247. She didn't know who had grouped them like this, but this was like roasting Bei Yunj on the fire. If the top scorer's father failed the subjects, it would be a joke. Bei Yunj looked at the manuscript in her hand. Suddenly, the boy saw the new homework given by Professor Huang and almost suffocated. No way. It's only the second week, and the pressure on us is already so great. After the boy was shocked, Bei Yunj glanced at the message in his group chat and left. Only the boy was left in disbelief. In the office. Old Huang, the person standing outside just now, was the top scorer of your department. Why are you so indifferent? A teacher teased. Huang Zui did not even look up, looking exceptionally cold. Yes, I don't know if she's from our department or Si Qingyan's. Then, he sneered. It's hard for me to see the top scorer of the college entrance examination 2 weeks before school starts. Come on, you're the one who cherishes talents the most in the entire physics department. Another teacher chuckled. The top scorer of the college entrance examination this time won the first prize in the physics competition and suppressed a student who won an international award. Obviously, she's not a mediocre person. The computer department next door has Qing Zihuai and Jian Shi. Our physics department has been too ugly these few years. However, Hai Ning is also a promising talent. Hearing his colleagues say this, Huang Zui did not say anything, but his gaze deepened. Outside the door. Hai Ning took the recommendation form from Huang Zui and got into her father's car with a smile on her face. Dad, I've already gotten Professor Huang's recommendation form. I'll be able to enter his laboratory soon. Hai Ning couldn't help but be excited as she spoke. Hai Wenqing laughed loudly. Really? Then Dad will take you to celebrate. Hai Wenqing brought Hai Ning to a high-end restaurant. After that, Hai Ning heard her father ask, Ning Ning, I heard that the eldest daughter of the Qin family is also in your department. The Qin family? I haven't met anyone with the surname Qin. Hai Ning did not think much of it. The eldest daughter of the Qin family is not surnamed Qin. Her name is Bei Yunj, and she's the fourth heir of the Qin family. As soon as Hai Wenqing finished speaking, Hai Ning's expression suddenly changed. What did you say? Bei Yunj? You know her? Hai Wenqing asked. Hai Ning's expression didn't look too good. She pursed her lips. I'm her roommate, but we don't have a good relationship. Hearing this, Hai Wenqing immediately sneered and put the red wine glass back on the table. The people of the Qin family are all the same. Dad, you know the Qin family? Is it Qin Yu's Qin family? Hai Ning clenched her fists. She never thought that Bei Yunj would be the elder young miss of the Qin family. Of course I know him. Ever since the eldest son of the Qin family, Qin Luyan, inherited the company, the Qin family's power has been rising day by day. Hai Wenqing's face was gloomy, and he was still angry. In the past half a year, I've given so many gifts and flattered so many people, but Qin Luyan still doesn't like our Hai family. Hai Ning's hand that was holding the knife and fork suddenly tightened, her heart feeling even more uncomfortable. Why is it Bei Yunj again? Why did this person have to deliberately go against her wherever she went? The next moment, Hai Wenqing glanced at Hai Ning and laughed. Fortunately, Ning Ning, you're capable. Did Bei Yunj get a spot in Professor Huang's laboratory? Hai Ning's tone was cold. What right does she have to get a spot? Professor Huang doesn't like her either. Currently, I'm the only one who got a recommendation. End of chapter. Chapter 1248. Hearing this, Hai Wenqing laughed out loud. He was obviously very happy. Ning Ning, what did you say? Professor Huang doesn't like her? For this group arrangement, Professor Huang placed her in the worst group. Hai Ning's expression was mocking. No matter how capable she is, can she lead a group of trash without learning anything? Ning Ning, you've really made your father proud. Hai Wenqing couldn't help feeling smug as if he had vented his anger. Qin Luyan was so high and mighty and looked down on half-baked people like them, but in the end? His sister couldn't even compare to his daughter. Ning Ning, I reckon that the Qin family's eldest daughter is the top scorer. The Qin family spent a lot of money to find a teacher to tutor her. Hai Wenqing chuckled. Otherwise, how can she compare to my Ningning? When he said this, Hai Wenqing had forgotten how much money he had spent to get famous teachers from various college entrance examination organizations to tutor Hai Ning. In the laboratory. Isn't that guy surnamed Huang too stubborn? It's not easy for the physics department to have a treasure. Not only is he not providing for you, but he won't even delay your homework. After saying that angrily, Si Qingyan turned around and met Bai Yunji's cold gaze. Alright, he was more or less responsible for this matter. If it weren't for the fact that famous researchers have been getting into trouble recently, I would have let that Huang guy know who he's giving a hard time. Si Qingyan muttered. Recently, 4 or 5 major international researchers had met with mishaps. The higher-ups were afraid that the criminals would target them one day. Hence, during this period of time, there had been very little news. They also did not let Bai Yunji participate in any activities. The people from the Falcon team and the Wolf team also protected Bai Yunji's safety day and night. Do the researchers who got into trouble recently all know each other? Bai Yunji suddenly asked. Si Qingyan exclaimed, really? I haven't noticed, but they seem to be of the same age. I have to keep an eye on our old Master Zhong. Old Master Zhong is about the same age as them. Bai Yunji glanced at Si Qingyan indifferently, not very interested in this matter. Instead, Si Qingyan, I'll go out for a while. Bai Yunji seemed to have thought of something and suddenly stood up. What's wrong? Is there anything urgent? Yes. Bai Yunji responded, then picked up the phone on the table to make a call and walked out. Looking at Bai Yunji's back view, Si Qingyan could not help but sigh. A big shot was indeed a big shot. Even a phone call was so mysterious. However, outside the door, Bai Yunji leaned casually against the school building and played with the key that Huashidu had given her. Soon, the call went through. The man's voice was low and pleasant. Yun. Brother, why didn't you come to find me? Bai Yunji tilted her head and asked lazily as she twirled the key with her index finger and kicked the pebbles on the road in boredom. The man didn't say anything at first. Then, he said, shall I pick you up for a meal tomorrow? So you're eating with someone else today? Bai Yunji licked her lips. She sounded as if she had caught an adulterer in the act. Huashidu couldn't help but laugh softly, but he answered seriously for his child's sake. I'll eat it myself. Bai Yunji could more or less hear the man's smile. The next moment, she casually said something and hung up. Liar. Bai Yunji slowly spat out these 2 words with an inexplicable sense of irritation. End of this chapter. Chapter 1249. Bai Yunji could feel how much she cared about this person now. She knew that most of her uneasiness and suspicions were not because of what the man had done, but because of herself. The restlessness and uneasiness that were engraved in her bones were the same as Meng Ying's. She was the lunatic. Bai Yunji squatted down unconsciously and lowered her head. She casually brushed her slightly curly black hair and restrained the stubbornness in her eyes. However, her eyes were still slightly red and the hostility had just subsided. Bai Yunji walked back and naturally took a cigarette from the cigarette box on Si Qingyan's table. She had just lit the cigarette butt and was biting it casually. Unexpectedly, just as she turned her head, she suddenly heard a click, and the camera flashed. With a cigarette between her fingers, Bai Yunji turned around and saw a round-faced girl holding a DSLR camera. She met her eyes. Student, why did you take a picture of me? Bai Yunji tilted her head and smiled at her, the cigarette between her fingers trembling casually. What the hell? Ever since she was reborn here, she would be caught smoking. Especially Song Yao. She was a typical person who believed that smoking was bad for the body. The photography faculty girl's heart raced when she saw Bai Yunji tilting her head and flicking the cigarette ash. Actually, she had only seen this person smoking very flirtatiously, so she could not help but take a picture of her. She did not expect to be caught red-handed. Smoking is bad for your health. The photography faculty girl straightened her neck and did not realize that her voice was trembling. Besides, this is from Professor C's table. Cigarette. After all, although she was flirting, Bei Yunj did not look like someone to be trifled with. So, you're going to report me to him? Bei Yunj's eyes curled up slightly as she approached her and asked. Don't do this again. The photography faculty girl's heart was thumping because of the overly beautiful big boss in front of her. She could not take it anymore. Okay. Bei Yunj smirked and took another step forward. After extinguishing the cigarette in front of her, she looked up lazily. Then you must keep it a secret for me. After that. Bei Yunj walked out and threw the cigarette butt into the trash can. After Bei Yunj left, the photography girl almost screamed out loud. Wasn't this guy too flirtatious? She's so much more flirtatious than those stinky boys. However, in the next moment, the girl realized that something was wrong. This big shot just casually threw the cigarette butt into the trash can. However, the trash bag had just been changed. Wasn't this clearly telling Professor C that someone had stolen his cigarettes? Before the girl could react, she saw Si Qingyan walking over from afar. She quickly picked up the cigarette and hid it behind her. Si Qingyan, who had just walked to the entrance, was shocked when he saw a female student bending over and standing up. What are you doing? Si Qingyan's eyelids twitched. The girl said, No, nothing, Professor C. I'm a reporter for the school newspaper. I just wanted to take some photos. Then hurry up and leave after you're done. Si Qingyan nodded and did not think too much about it. After the girl left, he glanced at the open pack of cigarettes and couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. Yo, Master Pei, you're so stressed out? Outside. Bei Yunj chewed on a piece of candy, glanced at the time, and prepared to go to her faculty's class. In the laboratory. When they saw Bei Yunj walk in, everyone was shocked. Su Xianing chuckled. Student Pei, you're still willing to come back? P.S. Paranoid demon boss X gentle and refined scum, Master Du is on his way to pacify people. End of chapter. Chapter 1250. Looking for me? Bei Yunj raised her eyebrows and asked slowly. Only a ghost would look for you. Su Xianing rolled her eyes. When she was sitting in the second row, the boy beside her muttered softly, Then why are you still helping her with her homework? Su Xianing was speechless. Student Pei, our group is here. Suddenly, someone waved at Bei Yunj. After confirming that there was no one else with the surname Pei in the class, Bei Yunj walked to the last row by the window. Professor Huang said that we will be in the same group from now on. The boy pushed up his glasses and looked a little introverted. Today is the second group assignment. Do you need me to do anything? Bei Yunj asked. It was already assigned during the first lesson. The boy was timid, as if he was afraid that Bei Yunj would be angry. Bei Yunj's eyelids twitched. The first lesson? You've had class? Yes. Where did Si Qingyan find the class schedule from? You're the top scholar. Of course, we understand that you don't want to be in the same group as us. The girl beside her shrugged, her eyes filled with indignation. In the past, when she was in high school, she was also a top student in her class. However, in Yun University, she had suddenly become a bad student who was despised by everyone. Meng Wenwen could not help but vent her anger on Bei Yunj. Bei Yunj glanced at Meng Wenwen casually. Before Bei Yunj could speak, the boy hurriedly interrupted, We still need someone to summarize the group assignment. Meng Wenwen immediately looked up. I can do it. She glanced at Bei Yunj and said in a sarcastic tone, Student Pei has never attended a class before. Can she summarize it well? Let me do it. After secretly trampling on this famous top scholar of the college entrance examination, Meng Wenwen felt much better. She straightened her slender neck and looked as arrogant as a white swan. She did not believe that she was worse than Bei Yunj. The boys were all afraid that Bei Yunj would lose her temper and directly hit Meng Wenwen. Then there doesn't seem to be much work left, except for discussing this topic with Professor Huang. Bei Yunj didn't even bother to look at Meng Wenwen. Instead, he asked indifferently, "What theme?" "That's the theme we've come up with." After the boy showed it to Bei Yunj, he asked carefully, "Bei Yunj, do you think it's okay?" Bei Yunj casually flipped through it. "It should work." When Meng Wenwen heard this, she couldn't help but laugh sarcastically. What class did she attend? Are you pretending to know when you don't? Since Student Pei thinks it's possible, then Student Pei will definitely be able to help Professor Huang pass the theme, right? Meng Wenwen deliberately exaggerated. Bei Yunj lazily closed the folder and picked it up casually. She sneered softly. What else could it be? Do you think I'm playing with you? After that, Bei Yunj walked out without looking back. You! Meng Wenwen blushed. The others couldn't help but exclaim. So cool. A exploded, our top scorer's father. Meng Wenwen noticed that the people around her were looking at Bei Yunj with admiration and felt even more indignant. In this class, she spent a lot of time interacting with her classmates. However, because she was grouped with the worst student, she was looked down upon and mocked behind her back. Why was Bei Yunj liked by so many people? Meng Wenwen bit her lip and sneered. Professor Huang didn't even pass the theme for Haining and the other students' homework. How could he pass it for her? How arrogant. Chapter 1251. Meng Wenwen was waiting for Bei Yunj to be slapped in the face. Thinking of this, her mood improved a lot. She continued to hum and do her homework. In the corridor, Bei Yunj had just arrived at the door when she bumped into Hai Ning and Chao Yingying, who had been rejected for the third time. Hai Ning's expression was not very good. Chao Yingying seemed to say something to Hai Ning, but she quickly noticed Bei Yunj. Chao Yingying smiled indifferently. Bei Yunj, are you here to submit the theme? I advise you not to waste your time. Take it back and edit it. Professor Huang doesn't have a theme that has passed. Really? Bei Yunj's tone was perfunctory. Chao Yingying was so angry that her face turned green. Hai Ning pulled Chao Yingying aside and glanced at Bei Yunj. Professor Huang is working on a project. He's not in a good mood. Got it. Bei Yunj hummed in response and pushed the door open. Hai Ning, look at her. She's too arrogant. If I missed so many of Professor Huang's classes, I would be too ashamed to show up in front of him. Chao Yingying sneered. She's the top scorer. She always thinks that she has special treatment. Hai Ning said calmly and left with the third draft. In the laboratory, the blackboard behind him was densely packed with research data and ideas. The other students were already used to this and could not understand what Professor Huang was writing. Professor Huang, I'm here to review the theme for you. Bei Yunj knocked on the door and glanced at the blackboard. Finally, her eyes fell on the white-haired old man. What do you want to see? No. Huang Zui did not even raise his head. He was very cold. If it were any other student, they would have been scared half to death and would have started to reflect on what they had done wrong. Who knew, the next moment, the old man at the door seemed to have been waiting for this sentence. Then I'll take it that you have passed. Huang Zui, the other students, where did this immortal come from? This guy was really wild. Huang Zui finally raised his head with a straight face. However, it was not difficult to hear the anger in his voice. Give it to me. Bei Yunj chuckled softly and handed the theme to Huang Zui. A few minutes later, the other graduate students were looking at each other, looking forward to the conversation between Professor Huang and this big boss. Unexpectedly, Huang Zui frowned and sneered. Is this the standard of the college entrance examination's top scholar? Compared to Hai Ning's group was simply too far. Huang Zui said expressionlessly, why don't you consider changing your major? Computer science suits you quite well. After that, Huang Zui continued to study the article. He wanted to see what was wrong with his project idea. The graduate students in the laboratory were a bit. At first, he thought that Pei Yunj was a big boss. He did not expect Professor Huang to persuade her to transfer to another faculty. Pei Yunj raised an eyebrow and glanced at the theme their team had chosen. She licked the corners of her red lips and smiled. This theme is not bad. Professor, hasn't the Physics Institute in our nation been researching this direction for the past 2 years? Hearing this, Huang Zui stopped writing. He did not expect Pei Yunj to know this. Pei Yunj casually glanced at Meng Wenwen's manuscript. Finally, she gave Huang Zui an overview of a different direction. Huang Zui's expression gradually improved. He could not help but look at Pei Yunj again. After a while, Huang Zui snorted. Not bad. The college entrance examination champion is something. Pei Yunj casually smiled and glanced at the blackboard. Professor, you wrote something wrong on the blackboard. Chapter 1252. What nonsense are you talking about? Huang Zui froze and reprimanded her. Pei Yunj broke a piece of chalk and walked towards the blackboard. She glanced at Huang Zui's writing process and erased most of it before writing down the result. Seeing this, Huang Zui was about to curse when he saw Pei Yunj's answer. His pupils shrank. This was actually the same result that his senior brother had sent him. His senior took 3 days to calculate this result. How long did Pei Yunj take to read the questions in the laboratory? Huang Zui was stunned. When the other graduate students saw Pei Yunj erasing Huang Zui's work, their scalps went numb. What was wrong with this junior? Why was she plucking the hair from a tiger's butt? Junior, apologize, the senior said to Pei Yunj in a low voice. In fact, even she was scared. In the past, there was a student who accidentally tore Huang Zui's paper when he was playing with others, and he was thrown out of the laboratory. The paper was transferred to another supervisor. However, this junior was even more daring. She erased Huang Zui's work in front of him. Get out. Huang Zui said in a low voice. The graduate students were scared when they heard this. Would the professor fight with the students? However, under the gaze of the professor, the graduate students immediately ran away. How did you calculate this? Huang Zui could not help but ask. Was this the standard of a first-year student? Pei Yunj frowned. Do I need to calculate this? In his previous life, Meng Liang was an outstanding physicist who was internationally renowned. Pei Yunj had been in Meng Liang's laboratory since she was young. She started helping Meng Liang with projects when she was 10 years old. Huang Zui was speechless. Was he being mocked by a student? Pei Yunj glanced at the mistakes in Huang Zui's paper and corrected a few of them. This made Huang Zui more and more silent. He even started to doubt his own standard. Seeing this, Pei Yunj was silent for a moment before she asked tentatively, Professor, do you understand? Huang Zui was speechless. There was an extremely awkward atmosphere in the air. When Pei Yunj was talking, Huang Zui was still thinking about life, so he didn't hear much. Can you tell me more? Huang Zui coughed softly. Pei Yunj didn't think much of it and repeated the story to Huang Zui. After Huang Zui understood, his feelings became even more complicated. He looked up at Pei Yunj. Where did you learn all this? Pei Yunj casually came up with an excuse. My brother taught me. Huang Zui, was her brother a scientific genius? Pei Yunj asked again, Professor, does that mean I've passed this time's assignment? After Huang Zui came back to his senses, he took a deep breath and said, Nothing in the folder is acceptable. Change it according to what you just said. All right. Pei Yunj's lips curved. On the other hand, the graduate student outside bumped into Hai Ning, who wanted to ask Professor Huang a question. Junior sister Hai Ning, don't go. This time, the professor must be angry. You might get scolded if you go. Hai Ning's eyes flashed with a strange light. She said casually, What's wrong? My roommate seems to be in there too. The graduate student was shocked. She's your roommate? She's too bold. Do you know what she did? She actually erased Professor Huang's project on the blackboard. Professor Huang was so angry that he kicked us out and left her alone to be scolded. Chapter 1253. Hai Ning froze when she heard this. She didn't expect Bai Yunj to be so daring. Then, a mocking look flashed in her eyes and the corners of her mouth curved slightly. Bai Yunj really thought too highly of herself. In that case, I'd better go back first, Hai Ning said. The other graduate students nodded. Hurry up and go back. Otherwise, if Professor Huang gets angry later, we'll all be in trouble. With a smile on her face, Hai Ning quickly left with a brisk pace. In the afternoon, when the other groups were about to leave, Bai Yunj's group was still waiting for Bai Yunj to come back. Meng Wenwen sneered. She definitely won't come back if she didn't pass the draft. What are you waiting for? Meng Wenwen, don't you think your attitude towards Bai Yunj is very bad? Another girl frowned. Meng Wenwen sneered and glanced at her roommate. What's wrong? She's the top scorer of the college entrance examination. Do I have to treat her well? If you want to treat her well, go ahead. All right, I don't have time to wait for her. Since you're not leaving, I'll go first. After that, Meng Wenwen picked up her bag and left. This scene made the other group members angry, but they could only endure it. They looked at each other and wondered if Bai Yunj would come back. Suddenly, they saw Bai Yunj come back. Bai Yunj. Did our group's theme not? The others were too embarrassed to ask. They were more or less afraid of hurting Bai Yunj's confidence. However, Bai Yunj glanced at them and said casually, "It passed, but the professor wants to change it." I knew it. It's okay. Even if it didn't pass, halfway through her sentence, the girl suddenly sobered up and looked up at Bai Yunj. Wait, what? Passed? Huang Zui actually had someone who passed the draft. What kind of perverted big boss could receive this treatment? Yes. Bai Yunj found some lotion and wiped her hands. She glanced at them casually. Don't you want to pass it? The group members, they didn't think about it. How much does the professor want to change it? They suppressed their excitement and looked at Bai Yunj. Bai Yunj, change it all. The group members, ? Then how did this draft pass it? Feeling everyone's silence, Bai Yunj said, let's talk tomorrow. Rest early. Good. Everyone looked at Bai Yunj's back and felt that this big boss's temper was not as bad as they had imagined. In the dormitory, Meng Wenwen was still putting on a facial mask. Hearing Chao Yingying's gossip, she couldn't help but laugh. Really? She really dared to erase Professor Huang's blackboard. Wouldn't Professor Huang hate her to death? Of Bai Yunj. After saying that, Meng Wenwen seemed to have thought of something. She bit her lip and immediately took out a box of skincare products from the drawer. She put down her pride and asked, Ying, can you help me give this box of skincare products to Haining? Chao Yingying was surprised. She could tell that this box of skincare products cost at least 7,000 to 8,000 yuan. What are you doing? I want to change groups. I don't want to be in the same group as those people, especially Bai Yunj, Meng Wenwen said. Chao Yingying smiled and took the skincare products. Actually, Haining's skincare products are very expensive. She doesn't need this set. But I can help you talk to him. Chapter 1254. Meng Wenwen immediately understood. Yingying, I'll give you this set then. Thank you, Wenwen. Chao Yingying returned to the dormitory with the set of 7,000 to 8,000 yuan worth of skincare products. Hai Ning frowned when she heard her voice. Can't you keep your voice down? You didn't even do the group homework. I was the only one correcting it. Chao Yingying immediately stopped smiling and went up to Hai Ning. Ning, you know that I tried my best. The only reason why the talented girl from High University could do it personally was because the entire group's content was not up to standard. Hai Ning did not say anything. Qiao Yingying continued probing. Ningning, why don't we change the group member? What do you think about Meng Wenwen joining our group? Hai Ning was annoyed, so she said sarcastically, Meng Wenwen. The one who can't do anything? What's she doing here? Is she just a decoration like you? Qiao Yingying's smile froze. An idea suddenly came to her mind. She said carefully, but... Ningning, isn't this a good opportunity to replace Su Xianing? She hasn't cooperated with us before. Hai Ning's eyes flashed. Although Su Xianing's ability was much better than Qiao Yingying's, she felt disgusted when she thought about Su Xianing's good relationship with Bei Yunj. Whatever. Hai Ning said casually. Great. I'll tell Meng Wenwen immediately. After this assignment is over, I'll ask her to change groups. Qiao Yingying smiled even more brightly. The next day, Bei Yunj was chewing on a bag of soy milk when she heard Meng Wenwen say angrily, why can we change it just because she says so? At this moment, everyone's eyes were on Bei Yunj. Obviously, they knew who Meng Wenwen was talking about. It's not Bei Yunj who said to change it, it's Professor Huang who said, before the boy who wanted to smooth things over could finish, Meng Wenwen sneered. I don't agree. Professor Huang passed it just because of a few words from her? What a joke. Su Xianing suddenly chuckled. Don't tell me you think Professor Huang is interested in your manuscript? You. Meng Wenwen's face turned green and red. She did think so. After all, she was the one who chose the theme. She didn't believe that it was Bei Yunj's credit for getting the draft approved. Yunj, the other team members were afraid that Bei Yunj would be angry. It's up to you whether to change it or not. Bei Yunj sipped on her soy milk, leaned back in her chair lazily, and flipped through the documents. Hearing this, the others heaved a sigh of relief. After some discussion, they still decided to change only half of it. In this way, Bei Yunj and Meng Wenwen would be given face. If you want to change something, you have to at least get my approval. I am the team leader. Meng Wenwen said domineeringly. At this moment, Bei Yunj had already finished drinking the soy milk. After throwing the bag accurately into the trash can, he suddenly dragged a chair over from the side with one hand. The sound of friction from the rolling ground made people tremble in fear. Bei Yunj threw the chair in front of Meng Wenwen, and the chair hit Meng Wenwen's desk. Meng Wenwen was so frightened that her expression changed immediately. Bei Yunj sat on the chair with her long legs and suddenly reached out to grab her collar. This caused Meng Wenwen to be lifted up and she had no choice but to bow forward. Meng Wenwen met Bei Yunj's cold gaze and shivered after seeing the faint smile in her eyes. I've spoiled you, huh? It was only now that Meng Wenwen suddenly woke up. Cold sweat broke out on her back as she remembered that when school had just started, it was rumored that this college entrance examination top scholar used to fight very fiercely. Chapter 1255. Meng Wenwen's face turned pale. No one dared to make a sound when they saw the terrifying atmosphere. Do you need me to teach you how to shut up? Bei Yunj's eyes flashed with irritation and anger. He smiled impatiently. Meng Wenwen was speechless. She could only nod stiffly with a pale face. Bei Yunj glanced at her and then let go of her hand. He turned around and continued to read the papers as if nothing had happened. Meng Wenwen, on the other hand, felt weak all over and was a little scared. It was only then that she suddenly realized that Bei Yunj was a dangerous existence not to be trifled with. Seeing Bei Yunj reading, the rest of the people did not dare to breathe loudly, afraid that they would disturb the big boss from reading. Bei Yunj's group work went very smoothly. Although Meng Wenwen hated Bei Yunj to the core, she was indeed afraid of Bei Yunj. On the day of the big homework report, it was Meng Wenwen's turn to report on behalf of the group. Su Xianing asked Bei Yunj, who was next to her, is your group ready? Bei Yunj replied, yes. Su Xianing was curious why Bei Yunj was not nervous. Do you think your group will be able to do it? Bei Yunj said concisely, no. Su Xianing was speechless. Then why are you sitting there calmly with a lollipop in your mouth and watching the fire burn across the river? It's as if you're not burning your own house. Bei Yunj, if you fail the big homework twice, you'll have to repeat the year. You know this, right? Su Xianing was puzzled. Why was Bei Yunj not worried at all? If the top scholar of the college entrance examination were to repeat the year, she would definitely become the laughingstock of Yun University. Bei Yunj asked casually, didn't you say that as long as my personal results are good enough, I won't fail? Do you still intend to get full marks for your personal homework? Bei Yunj looked at her and asked, no? Su Xianing was speechless. She felt that there was no way she could communicate with Bei Yunj normally. She was speechless. Professor Huang was very strict in his grading. The highest score for his students was slightly over 90. How could she ask Professor Huang to give her full marks? Soon. After Meng Wenwen finished her report, when it came to Huang Zui's comments, Meng Wenwen's eyes were filled with caution and anticipation. She didn't think that Bei Yunj could pass the first draft without her help. Who knew? Huang Zui's eyes darkened. He looked much worse than when he reported to the previous groups. Suddenly, Huang Zui turned to look at the back row and asked with a sneer, that's the standard of the big assignment. Someone still has the nerve to eat a lollipop. Pei Qian paused with the candy in his mouth. At this time, the others were laughing at him. Meng Wenwen's face was also red. When some people made their proposals, they told me all sorts of things, but what did they actually hand over? Do you think the trash is valuable? Every word that Huang Zui said was like a slap to the faces of the other members of Bei Yunj. Bei Yunj had asked them to change all the content, but they didn't think it was necessary to be so competitive, so they stood on Meng Wenwen's side. If you hand in this kind of trash again, your entire group can leave the laboratory together. Huang Zui was expressionless. Next group. Hearing this, Meng Wenwen's face turned pale and her eyes slowly turned red. She felt that she had lost a lot of face. She ran off the stage, quickly wiped away her tears and sat down with her head lowered. Su Xianing turned her head and realized that the big boss beside her wasn't sad at all. He even put his hands in his pockets and continued to watch the show. It was as if she wasn't the one being scolded. His attitude was really good. In the end, the big assignment report ended. Their group realized that Huang Zui had only given Bei Yunj a passing grade. Chapter 1256. The expressions of the team members changed slightly, but after seeing the division of labor, they understood why Bei Yunj was the only one who had passed. Bei Yunj was the one who had drafted the topic report, but because of the poor performance of the entire team, Bei Yunj had only passed. However, Meng Wenwen threw a tantrum. Her eyes were red and she couldn't help but laugh bitterly. Wouldn't it have been better if you had told us earlier to please Professor Huang? She's the only one who has passed in the entire team. Is she happy? After that, Meng Wenwen ran out and squatted in the empty corridor, crying. She didn't think that she was worse than Bei Yunj, but Bei Yunj was popular and even Professor Huang favored her. At the same time, the others also had mixed feelings, but they didn't think that Bei Yunj had pleased Huang Zui. If Huang Zui was so easy to please, he wouldn't be the famous devil professor of Yun University. At this moment, Bei Yunj was called to the office by Huang Zui. Before Bei Yunj could speak, she heard Huang Zui ask slowly, "You have such a good temper?" Bei Yunj, Huang Zui looked at Bei Yunj's personal file on the computer and sighed. "You're so good at fighting. How can the other members of the team not listen to you?" This was the first time he had seen such a special personal file in Yun University. The girl looked pale and thin and had even been to the police station for fighting. Bei Yunja's eyelids twitched when she saw Huang Zui looking at her bad record. She licked her lips again. "We have to give others a chance when it comes to group work. Don't think that I don't know the situation in your team." Huang Zui slowly picked up his teacup. If Meng Wenwen was a male student, her head would have been smashed by you. I didn't expect you to be so protective of the fairer sex. Bei Yunj, but today, Meng Wenwen mentioned to me that Su Xianing will be transferred to your team. What do you think? Huang Zui asked. Bei Yunj replied, okay. Then you'll be the team leader in the future. If they still don't listen to you, tell them to come to me. After Huang Zui finished speaking, he suddenly changed the topic. He handed an application form to Bei Yunj and asked patiently, by the way, do you want to come to my laboratory? My lab is quite fun. Occasionally, I don't have to take an exam. All right. Bei Yunj raised her eyebrows. I'll think about it. Before Huang Zui could rejoice, he was choked by the second half of Bei Yunj's sentence. If it were anyone else, they would have been dancing with joy, but she still had to think about it. Okay, take your time to think about it. Huang Zui turned his head in a fit of pique and did not look at Bei Yunj. In the end, Bei Yunj really turned around and left. Huang Zui was so angry that his beard was about to explode. However, Huang Zui was serious about accepting this student. With this kind of talent, as long as he was properly nurtured and did not go astray, he would definitely become a pillar of the country in the future, the country's future scientific research main force. In the dormitory, Hai Ning saw that in the freshmen's group, some people were discussing the college entrance examination group's big assignment. The corners of her mouth could not help but curl up. Unexpectedly, when Hai Ning walked into the laboratory with such a mood the next day, she heard other people discussing it. What's going on? That's impossible. How did Bei Yunj get a place in the laboratory? Suddenly, the corners of Hai Ning's mouth froze. She looked at the person who spoke and asked, what do you mean? The boy paused and said, Professor Huang just announced that Bei Yunj is a member of the laboratory. Chapter 1257. Hai Ning's expression changed. She had been able to enter the laboratory because of the minister's strong recommendation. Professor Huang had hesitated for a while before accepting her. But why could Bei Yunj enter the laboratory directly? Professor Huang clearly did not want to see her before and had a grudge against Bei Yunj's frequent visits to the computing department's laboratory. The people around also complained. No way. Isn't this top scholar's privilege too much? That's right. Everyone worked hard for a week or two to do homework, but in the end, they couldn't even compare to Bei Yunj, who came in last. The other students were unhappy. Only Bei Yunj's team members were ashamed. They knew that they were last because they had dragged them down. It was normal for the students in the class to be unhappy. There were a total of 5 classes in the physics department, but there were only 2 spots in the laboratory. However, it had only been a few weeks since school started and Hai Ning had already gotten a spot. This made the other students work harder and want to fight for the remaining spot. However, they did not expect Bei Yunj to suddenly get the other spot. It was fine if Hai Ning did it, but what right did Bei Yunj have? Everyone secretly looked down on Bei Yunj's special behavior and started to distance themselves from Bei Yunj. However, Bei Yunj did not notice anything either. After class as usual, she went to the cultural center after seeing Lu Yuanxi's message. The cultural center of Yun University was very large and was almost like a medium-sized concert hall. Master Pei, it wasn't easy to invite you over. Lu Yuanxi could not help but sigh when he saw Bei Yunj. What's wrong? Bei Yunj pulled down her mask. She did not expect Songya to be beside her and raised an eyebrow. The school's cultural performance. I don't know who revealed that I know how to play the violin, but they got me here. Lu Yuanxi scratched the back of his head impatiently. And Sister Yao. She was recommended to play the piano with me. Isn't that good? Bei Yunj chuckled and asked lazily. Lu Yuanxi was speechless. Aren't you going to help? Qin Youjiao is also participating in the cultural performance. I heard that she even invited a popular boy group to rehearse with her. Oh right, there's also someone called Yu Ling who's performing with Qin Youjiao. I keep feeling that something's wrong. Actually, Lu Yuanxi could tell that Yu Ling wanted to provoke Song Yao. Yu Ling? Bei Yunj frowned. He had a deep impression of this person. Fu Yanbai had destroyed the Song family for Yu Ling. It's just a performance. Before Song Yao could finish speaking, Bei Yunj interrupted her. How can I help? Lu Yuanxi struck while the iron was hot. You're playing a duet with Yao Mei? However, I heard that Qin Youjiao's group's song is a new work by a master from the International Musicians Association. Bei Yunj played with the ring on his index finger and leaned back lazily. I'll write the score. Lu Yuanxi's smile froze. He had forgotten about this master's extreme confidence. Qin Youjiao had already invited the big shots of the International Musicians Association to arrange the music, so how could this ancestor still dare to do it herself? Lu Yuanxi organized his words. Yunj, it's like this. We can be more serious for this performance. After all, I understand. I'll arrange the music seriously, Bei Yunj said seriously. Lu Yuanxi was speechless. Song Yao was speechless. Could someone come and interrupt this big shot's blind confidence? At last, Lu Yuanxi and Song Yao had no choice but to bite the bullet and let Bei Yunj arrange the music himself. In the laboratory. Professor, I heard that you have a data project that you need help with? Hai Ning asked with a smile. End of chapter. Chapter 1258. Huang Zui glanced at Hai Ning and continued with his experiment. Yes. Then can I help teach you? Hai Ning asked excitedly. However, Huang Zui did not even look up. There's no need. Just leave it to Bei Yunj when she comes back. I can't find her all day long. Hai Ning's smile froze and she clenched her fists. Bei Yunj again. Hai Ning continued to smile and said casually, but I heard that Bei Yunj is preparing for the cultural performance. She seems to be very interested in extracurricular activities. Huang Zui did not understand what Hai Ning was implying. He sneered. Oh, I didn't expect her to have a talent show. I have to go and take a look this time. Suddenly, Hai Ning's face turned pale. Professor Huang had never liked crowds. According to the department head, he had always hated this kind of cultural performance. A few years ago, there was a senior who did not enter the laboratory because of the cultural performance. He was scolded by Professor Huang. Hai Ning's expression was ugly. Huang Zui thought for a while and passed the data to her. Since Bei Yunj doesn't have time, you can give it a try. But this is a bit difficult for you. Hai Ning held the document stiffly, but her face felt hot. Okay. Professor Huang actually thought that she was not as good as Bei Yunj. Only when Bei Yunj did not want it would it be her turn. Hai Ning took the data and sat at the empty table next to her. Then, she heard Huang Zui answer the phone. It was another professor from the physics department on the phone. Old Huang, your experimental skills have improved this year? Our laboratory is only halfway through this topic and you have already completed it? Tell me honestly, are you hiding something? Huang Zui's eyelids twitched. What should he say? He was also stuck in the middle for a long time. He did not expect that he would be able to complete it after being glanced at by a freshman. I'll tell you in person next time. I'm also very tired about this. Huang Zui took off his glasses and rubbed his face. Why did you call? Have you forgotten about the annual debate in the physics department? Have you decided on which students to form a team for the debate? A debate? Huang Zui hesitated for a moment, then reported a few more names, Haining, Su Xianing. However, he was still missing one. Hai Ning suddenly smiled and said, Professor, why don't we let Bei Yunj join us? Huang Zui frowned. Actually, he was afraid that Bei Yunj would be too busy. After all, Bei Yunj still had Si Qingyan's laboratory to work on. Let's see if she's willing, Huang Zui said. Hai Ning, okay, I will ask her. After that, Hai Ning's eyes flashed with coldness, and the corner of her mouth curled up into a mocking smile. She then focused her attention and continued to calculate the data. Since they had praised Bai Yunj so highly, then she was going to make Bai Yunj fall even harder. Bai Yunj's reputation would be tarnished for thousands of years if the debate between the freshmen of the physics department was to be watched by the whole school. Bai Yunj had just returned to the dormitory when she suddenly heard Hai Ning ask indifferently, "Bai Yunj, do you want to participate in the physics debate competition?" "No." Bai Yunj did not even turn around. Hai Ning did not expect Bai Yunj to reject her so straightforwardly. She pursed her lips. "Professor Huang let you into the laboratory for you. Now, the freshmen are saying that he's unfair. Don't you want to clear Professor Huang's name?" Chapter 1259. Correct the name? Do I need to correct the name? Why would Professor Huang care about this kind of nonsense? Bai Yunj sneered. Hai Ning almost couldn't say a word. Huang Zui was a loner and was often talked about. Of course, Huang Zui never took it seriously. This was inexplicably similar to Bai Yunj. "Hai Ning, if you want Bai Yunj to participate, just say so. Why do you have to put in so much effort?" Su Xianing sneered and exposed Hai Ning mercilessly. Hai Ning pursed her lips and glanced at Bai Yunj. She said sarcastically, "Isn't it because Bai Yunj doesn't dare to participate? Every class has to send 5 students to participate. Bai Yunj is a lab member, but she's afraid of losing. If this gets out, it'll be a joke. Hai Ning, you're the one who's afraid of Bai Yunj." Su Xianing stabbed her directly. "You're talking nonsense. Why should I be afraid of her?" Hai Ning's voice suddenly became sharp. All of a sudden. "Okay, I'll participate," Bai Yunj said slowly. Hai Ning turned her head and met Bai Yunj's eyes. Bai Yunj's eyes looked like she could see through people's hearts. But in the next moment, she sneered softly and turned to leave. Hai Ning's body stiffened. Because of Bai Yunj's gaze, her face gradually became hot. Bai Yunj's gaze just now seemed to know all her intentions and was mocking her for overestimating herself. Hai Ning's eyes flashed with gloominess and she unconsciously gritted her teeth. Bai Yunj also dared to look down on her. Time passed quickly and the 6 selected students began to prepare for the oral debate. Minister Su, who organized this activity, glanced around and sneered. Bai Yunj didn't come to participate in the oral debate again? Hai Ning didn't even raise her head as she looked at the review materials. No, she never came here, did she? Department head Su was already unhappy with Bai Yunj because she was unwilling to join the department. Now, he was even angrier. "I think she's really arrogant. Hai Ning, you'll lead the team for tomorrow's debate," Minister Su said coldly before adding. Hai Ning looked pleased. "Really? What's wrong with that? Is there anyone more suitable than you?" After Minister Su finished speaking, a strange glint flashed across his eyes. He flicked the pen in his hand twice and said, "Let Bai Yunj be the substitute." When these words fell, it simply stunned everyone. Making Bai Yunj a substitute? If news of this got out, wouldn't Bai Yunj become a joke? After all, not long ago, Bai Yunj had been in the limelight because he was the top scholar of the college entrance examination. Meanwhile, the corners of Hai Ning's mouth couldn't help but curve upwards. The next day, the oral debate officially started. When the participating students saw the situation on stage, they couldn't help but feel nervous. Especially the big shots at the professor's table. After a series of questions from the contestants, almost everyone panicked. Isn't this too tragic? Are the professors asking questions that humans should ask? Su Xianing's scalp went numb. Don't say any more. We're still all right. Look, old Qi on stage can't answer the questions. His professor is sitting at the professor's table and helping to protect him. Also, even if you embarrass yourself, it's only in the department. The postgraduate students next door are the ones who are miserable. Their opponents are the postgraduate students from Neely University. Do you know that there are 2 students from Neely University? End of chapter. Chapter 1260. His students. Su Xianing covered her mouth subconsciously. Her eyes were wide open and her cheeks were a little red. Yeah, those two won an international award in their second year of graduate studies. Sure enough, great teachers produce great students, the boy said enviously. At the same time, the contestants were standing close to each other and heard the professor next to them turn off the microphone and start a fight. You with the surname Liang, you're not done, are you? Did I not give your student's face just now? You have to look at the owner before beating the dog. The contestants on the stage were speechless. Su Xianing was speechless. She was indeed protected by her professor. Mr. Jiang, be careful. We're in front of the students. Professor Liang's eyelids twitched and he coughed lightly. If you ask my students questions again, I'll teach you a lesson when we go back. Professor Jiang snorted. Seeing this, Professor Liang had no choice but to calm him down and let this group of students go. Su Xianing suddenly reacted. Wait, but Professor Huang is not at the professor's table. The boy said, yeah, Professor Huang is leading the postgraduate team. After saying that, the boy also realized that something was wrong. Wait a minute. Since Professor Huang was not here, then they could not even be dogs? At this moment, Hai Ning straightened her back and walked out from the back. Hai Ning, our team is competing with Class 5. Professor Huang is not here. The boy was also nervous. Class 5 was led by Professor Liang. From the level of the oral defense just now, it could be seen that they were very strong. It's okay, we can win. Hai Ning said confidently and looked around. Where's Bei Yunj? She should be. Before the boy could finish, Hai Ning interrupted him and said in a mocking tone, forget it, the substitute is not that important. Anyway, it won't be her turn. Su Xianing frowned subconsciously, but the boy next to her pulled her back and gestured for her to calm down. Soon, Hai Ning led the team to the stage. After shaking hands with the leader of Class 5, they began to score their oral defense. Perhaps it was because Huang Zui was popular in the department, Hai Ning and Class 5 successfully scored the basic points. When Hai Ning heard the applause from the audience, the smile on her face widened and she felt very comfortable. As for the leader of Class 5, when he saw this scene, a playful look flashed in his eyes. Then, he seemed to be discussing something and finally reached a consensus. The match began. To everyone's surprise, Hai Ning's team also won very easily, which made the other members of Class 1 feel a little incredulous. Unconsciously, Hai Ning had also thrown out all her cards, but she didn't notice that her opponent's face didn't show any frustration. Instead, he smiled meaningfully. At this time, Bei Yunj was caught red-handed. You're a substitute? The girl who rushed over asked. Bei Yunj thought for a while and answered casually, yes. Then why don't you hurry up? The girl sized up Bei Yunj and sighed inwardly. How could a postgraduate student look so young? But the next moment, she dragged Bei Yunj to the postgraduate team's arena. For a moment. Before she could react, Bei Yunj was taken away by accident. The competition between the graduate students had reached two extremes. The physics department of Yun University could be said to be one of the best in the country. However, they did not expect to be crushed by the students of Nili University this time. Is there no one in Yun University who can answer our question? Chapter 1261. The other party asked arrogantly. Before this, one of the students who had stayed up for several days and nights was so angry that he suddenly blacked out and collapsed. Only then did he get someone to find a substitute. Huang Zui also put on his glasses and looked at the question on the PowerPoint. His expression turned ugly. The two of them aren't from the physics department, right? The dean couldn't help but ask the other professors. Those two are from the computer science department. One of the professors glanced at the brown-haired man and the golden-haired man not far away and answered in a low voice. To be able to reach such a depth in the field of physics, aren't they from our physics department? The other professors didn't look too good. At least, with the difficulty of this question, not to mention the students, more than half of the professors might not be able to answer it completely in 15 minutes. Jian, she is also a student. I heard from her that the requirements for students are to know a little in all aspects, so. Suddenly, someone explained. The professors were speechless. What kind of pervert was this? Teaching the students to be like this? Huang Zui couldn't help but sigh. I wonder if he gave the students some medicine. If that's the case, even if I have to go bankrupt, I'll give a dozen to each of them who can't even pass the graduation thesis defense. The dean and professors were speechless. Where's Jianxi? Let Jianxi try as a substitute. Suddenly, a professor thought of a brilliant idea. Since they couldn't beat the students, they would let the students from university join. Jianxi said that she was too bad at computing, so she took a leave of absence and went to Country R to learn from Marcus from Country R's Computing Institute, another professor said faintly. The others were speechless. It was really a case of when it rains, it pours. At this moment, the other party continued to clamor. What's wrong? Could it be that the students from the famous Yun University can't even compare to the students from the other faculties of Neely University? Hearing this, the others were furious and wanted to rush up to beat him up. Calling university students over to participate in the competition and even giving in to Yun University. Wasn't he asking for a beating? At the same time, Bai Yanj had just arrived at the venue when she realized that it was surprisingly empty, but there were no cameras around. She hesitated for a moment and glanced at the international competition venue. Is this a thesis defense competition? The senior smiled. What else could it be? A social gathering? Bai Yanj turned around and asked, where are the others? You can go first, why do you care about the others? The senior sister directly pushed him up. As soon as Bai Yanj went on stage, she glanced at the PowerPoint presentation. Then, she turned around and heard the arrogant words coming from the other side. Is there anyone who can do it? Did your school just randomly find someone to deal with it? Bai Yanj looked at the arrogant boy and raised her eyebrows lazily. At the professor's table. The professor suddenly broke out in a cold sweat. Didn't you ask Jing Xian to come? Why is there a student I don't know here? As soon as he finished speaking, Huang Zui, who was drinking tea, suddenly looked up. When he saw Bai Yanj on the stage, he spat out his tea. The others looked at Huang Zui. Huang Zui, on the other hand, was completely dumbfounded. His mind was filled with questions. Why are you here? Shouldn't Bai Yanj be at the freshman debate right now? Why was she at the graduate student team's debate? Bai Yanj didn't have much patience, but she still lowered her voice. She casually pulled down the brim of her hat to avoid the camera and frowned. Didn't you ask me to come? End of chapter. Chapter 1262. Next, Neely University student was still laughing strangely. Another one to make up the numbers? If you can't do it, then. That person had not finished speaking. Bai Yanj picked up the chalk and pulled up her black mask with one hand. Then, she scribbled 2 sentences on the blackboard. In the end, she wrote down an answer. From the moment she entered until now, she had answered the difficult questions that had trapped all the graduate students of Yun University. This made the venue suddenly silent. Then, they saw Bai Yanj throw the chalk into the trash can closest to Neely University student. Her eyes seemed to be smiling, but there was no warmth. Other than teaching you to talk nonsense, what else does your professor do? Her tone was slow, but it was wild and wild. Compared to the arrogant Neely University student just now, the person in front of her had a strong aura. She was simply beating everyone else. When the Yun University students heard this, they were simply overjoyed. What kind of immortal candidate was this? However, very soon, Huang Zui's graduate student was puzzled. Strange, why does this girl look so familiar? Suddenly, the graduate student slammed the table and stood up. You. You're this year's college entrance examination top scorer. The others were stunned when they heard that. This year's college entrance examination top scorer? Wasn't she just a freshman? Why was she a candidate for the graduate student? She was so strong even though she was of a higher level? What kind of cheat king was this? Why are you our substitute? The graduate student asked from the bottom of his heart. Bei Yunj, I was dragged here. Upon finishing her words, the senior who had dragged her over froze. Could it be that she had dragged the wrong person? Wang Guangyun, I asked you to drag someone. Can you drag a man into a woman? The teacher was exasperated and her lungs hurt from anger. At this moment, Bei Yunj also realized the situation. She looked at the people staring at her and was silent for a moment. Sorry, there's a mistake. I'm the substitute next door. Upon finishing her words, Bei Yunj prepared to leave the stage. She did not feel embarrassed at all. The others were speechless. This was not bad. After winning the other party, she trampled on them and even apologized politely. Wait! Huang Zui called out to Bei Yunj. When she turned around to look at him, he said, You can compete here. The other professors also nodded in their hearts. They stared at Bei Yunj as if they were afraid that she would run away. The students of Neely University seemed to understand what Yun University was trying to do and immediately retorted, She's just an undergraduate student. It's not against the rules for her to participate in our debate. Senior sister, just because you say no, it doesn't mean no. You even found 2 computer science students for the physics department's competition. How dare you criticize us? Instantly, the faces of the Neely University students turned red. They couldn't retort. If you want her to go, then let her go. Could it be that our Neely University will lose just because your Yin University has a replacement? The boy from Neely University sneered. You're a freshman, right? Come quickly, I want to see what you're capable of. After that, both sides began the next round of debate. The other professors kept a close eye on Bei Yunj, afraid that Bei Yunj would leave. After all, everyone had heard of the temper of this college entrance examination top scholar. It was said that back then, in order to poach Bei Yunj into Yun University, the principal had played cards with old Master Qin for the entire afternoon and even lost all his private savings. But now, it seemed that his private savings were worth it. Bei Yunj took off her jacket casually and threw it on the back of the chair. She sneered. What's the hurry? Will someone offer you incense later? As soon as she finished speaking, all the teachers and students of Yun University were speechless. The atmosphere was strange. Chapter 1263. This speech was at a level that even his own people felt was ruthless. Old Huang, don't you think that your student has a good temper? I think there will be a lot of training in the future. Huang Zui sneered as he defended his student. What's wrong? I, old Zhang, won first place in the international physics competition at the age of 16. Do I still need others to teach my students? Fine, your student won't let me say it. At this moment, Neely University students were also furious. But in the following competition, because of a freshman team substitute, it caused a crushing reversal. During the debate, the other students of Yun University were all holding the information and treating this competition seriously. However, Bei Yunj leaned lazily against the podium as if he had no bones. Facing the questions of Neely University students, even the draft paper used by the contestants was snow white. After scanning the question information, he threw it on the table. But to the students of Neely University, what was this if not provocation? Could it be that the draft paper was not even worthy of being used in a competition with them? However, no matter how biased the direction of the question they chose was, this person was like a living library. From time to time, he would counterattack, leaving the person who came up with the question speechless. In the end, no one took too much from Bei Yunj. There are still 2 points to tie. Isn't your school going to work harder? Bei Yunj caught up with young Master Yun's 30 points alone. This made the faces of the students of Neely University turn ashen. Meanwhile, the professors of Yun University were all elated and in high spirits. Look, this was the style of their Yun University students. What are you so proud of? The students of Neely University were flustered and exasperated. They gathered again to discuss how to get their team's trump card to come back. They didn't believe that Bei Yunj wouldn't kneel down and admit defeat this time. At the professor's table. What are they discussing? The dean couldn't help asking. Huang Zui said calmly, they should be asking the two from the computer science department to come back. Those two students? When the professors heard this, their expressions did not look too good. Actually, Jasmine and Titch had come to the scene just now, but they felt that the scene was boring, so they threw out a question and left. And the question that they threw out just happened to be the question that Bei Yunj had solved. They felt that Bei Yunj was talented, but this student, they were not on the same level. Huang Zui pursed his lips and hinted at her through the microphone, Bei Yunj, if you don't think you can perform well in the next round, you can quit anytime. Who knew? Bei Yunj did not receive any hint from Huang Zui. Instead, he turned his back to Huang Zui and casually made an okay sign. Huang Zui, the professor next to him, also smiled stiffly. It's good for young people to be confident. Huang Zui, soon. The students of Neely University were in an uproar. The professors of Yun University turned around and saw Jasmine and Titch walking in. Facing the personal student of a top researcher, they couldn't help but feel heavy in their hearts. Jasmine, Titch, it's up to you to bring glory to the school. The other students cheered Jasmine and Titch on. However, when the two of them found out that a group of graduate students from their school could not beat the freshmen from Yunhua University's physics department, they could not help but want to curse. Were these people useless? However, their extremely disdainful and arrogant attitude persisted until they turned around and saw a familiar face. Chapter 1264. Who the F***ck were they supposed to compete with? Bei Yunj was also caught off guard by the sight of her own students. Question mark. No one had expected that they would meet on the competition stage. Especially when Bei Yunj's eyes were saying, let's see who still has a brain full of wastewater and needs me to shake it. In the end, she met her own two students. This was probably the most subtle thing Bei Yunj had ever encountered in her life. She wanted to teach them a lesson, but she didn't expect them to be her own students. Bei Yunj, Jasmine and Titch were also arrogant just now, and their expressions were exactly the same as their own teachers. However, when they saw their teacher, they were instantly terrified. How could their teacher be a freshman in the physics department? Before they could figure it out, the students beside them whispered passionately, Titch, Jasmine, quick, kill her. Jasmine and Titch, I'll kill your mother. Teacher, Jasmine quickly changed his words and asked carefully, why are you in the physics department? Bei Yunj looked up and said casually, you're interfering in my business? Jasmine, I wouldn't dare, teacher. When Titch thought about competing with his own teacher, he wanted to faint on the spot and stay in the hospital. However, the next moment, he still looked at his teacher eagerly. Then, do we still want to compete? Bei Yunj closed her eyes. Her heart went numb at the thought of this situation. She couldn't help but take a deep breath. Damn. She opened her eyes again and glanced at Jasmine and Titch. She took off her hat impatiently and brushed her black hair back again. She said impatiently, get ready. Hurry up. Everyone looked at Jasmine and Titch on the stage. The way they chatted with Bei Yunj was like a large pet dog that had become obedient in an instant. They felt that something was wrong, and in the following competition, everyone felt that the atmosphere was strange. Bei Yunj listened patiently, as if she was listening to a child performing a solo performance. Titch and Jasmine tried their best not to be nervous as they asked questions carefully. This scene was very similar to the graduation debate they had experienced. Jasmine and Titch were here for their graduation debate, and Bei Yunj was their debate teacher. As Bei Yunj listened, at first, she fell into a self-reflection of, did I teach them like this? Later on, she would occasionally lower her head and let out an extremely soft sneer, directly falling into self-mockery. She wondered if her teaching skills were too bad. However, she did not expect Jasmine and Li Yunj to see Pei Yunj's every frown and smile. It was as if they saw Bei Yunj to say, "I've to teach you too to be trash to be able to you." Jasmine and Tich felt suffocated and caught a cold. Yunj to Bei Yunj to, Bei Yunj to be Bei to be the trash. Pei Yunj was silent for a moment before she asked slowly, "Is that all your teacher taught you?" The others were in an uproar. Wasn't this college entrance examination top scorer a little too daring? She actually dared to point out that he wasn't good at his job. Jasmine was the only one who felt numb. What else could be scarier than a teacher doubting her own teaching skills in front of her students? After the debate, Jasmine and Tich felt like they were taking an exam on the spot. They were helpless and afraid. However, in the end, Bei Yunj looked at Jasmine and Tich in silence and started to go easy on her students without blushing. Chapter 1265. I don't know. Next question. Bei Yunj said so matter-of-factly that people wondered if they had heard wrongly. After all, Bei Yunj's counterattack just now was too violent. Jasmine and Tich also felt it. Their teacher was starting to close his eyes and go easy on them. What kind of touching teacher-student relationship was this? Although Bei Yunj usually didn't like to talk nonsense with them and even despised them for not being smart, he was still protective of them at critical moments. Jasmine and Tich were touched, but at the same time, they trembled in fear as they continued to probe their teacher. Bei Yunj glanced at the scoreboard from the corner of his eye. He was going easy on them one by one and said that he didn't know how to answer with his eyes closed. The Yun University teachers and students who felt that something was amiss were speechless. What was going on? Was there a traitor in their team? Meanwhile, Bei Yunj was still thinking of ways to go easy on Jasmine and Tich. At the end, when the referee set the questions, Bei Yunj and Jasmine and Tich answered in two different areas. Half an hour later, to everyone's surprise, Bei Yunj's score was actually similar to Jasmine and Tich's. Yun University won slightly, but Jasmine and Tich didn't lose badly either. After the competition ended, the Yun University students finally heaved a sigh of relief, while the Nili University students were like frosted eggplants. Huang Zui came down from the professor's seat and couldn't help but ask, "How did your score get so close to your opponents?" Huang Zui thought that Bei Yunj was sensible and knew not to embarrass the other schools. However, in the next second, Pei Yunj glanced at the two people not far away carelessly and snorted coldly. "I know very well how many nerves they have in their brains." Huang Zui was speechless. Why did this sound so ridiculous? At the same time, the other graduate students were numb as they watched Bei Yunj torture the graduate students from Nili University. What kind of reincarnation was this? Did torturing students feel no pressure at all? However, the scene changed. On the other side, the situation of the freshman group debate suddenly changed. Hai Ning, who had led the team to victory, looked at the current score with a pale face. Class 5 was clearly toying with her. In the beginning, he had held back his strength, allowing her to throw out her trump card without fear. But in the end, he had turned around and killed her. Hai Ning was completely caught off guard. What should we do? Why do we keep losing? The boys in Class 1 couldn't help but murmur. The audience also imperceptibly gave them a lot of pressure. "Let Bei Yunj do it," Su Xianing suddenly said. But Hai Ning suddenly became agitated. "What's the use of Bei Yunj coming? She's just a substitute. Do you expect her to turn the situation around?" After saying this, Haining turned around and saw that Bei Yunj had just returned. She put her hands in her pockets carelessly and blew bubble gum. She glanced at the poor results of the first class and sat next to the girl from the philosophy department. She had an expression that said, "It has nothing to do with me." Hai Ning's face sank. But in the next moment, she heard the leader of Class 5 ask boldly with a smile, at this point, you're still hiding your class's college entrance examination top scorer? What's the matter? Are we not worthy of being compared to your class's top scorer? Hearing this, Hai Ning trembled with anger. Bai Yunj was just a substitute, so she was not qualified to compete directly. But others thought that Bai Yunj was their team's trump card. Chapter 1266. The rest of the people's eyes also landed on Bai Yunj, who was biting her bubble gum. It was as if they were waiting for Bai Yunj to appear. Yunj? Song Yao called out hesitantly. Bai Yunj looked up at Song Yao and said faintly, "No, I'm not going up. I've already done it as a substitute. Wouldn't it be bullying if I do it again?" She had already heard her own student and still came over to bully this group of people. Si Qingyan could at least treat her as a joke for a year. Song Yao asked, "You've done it? Didn't she just arrive?" Before Bai Yunj could reply, Hai Ning said sharply, "Bai Yunj, didn't you agree to participate in the competition and be a substitute? Are you going back on your word at the last minute?" With that said, everyone's eyes landed on Bai Yunj. So the top scholar of the college entrance examination was just a substitute? Wasn't she too pitiful, or did this top scholar really rely on her college entrance examination scores to not take others seriously and was overtaken by other team members? Everyone's thoughts ran wild. However, Bai Yunj was pushed out by Song Yao. Hai Ning lowered her head and met Song Yao's cold gaze that seemed to be smiling but was not smiling. It was obvious that she was hostile. Was this philosophy department belle protecting Bai Yunj so much? However, before Bai Yunj, who was pushed up, could bite her bubble gum, she stood below the stage and looked at Song Yao with twitching eyelids. Why was this fellow's temper getting worse? Bai Yunj was pushed out and could not go down, so she could only walk up the stage slowly. At the same time, Professor Liang, who was at the professor's seat, finally got through to Huang Zui. "Are you coming? Your students are about to be wiped out. They can't take it anymore." "No, we're here to comfort Neely University's students." With that said, Professor Liang was stunned. What's going on? Didn't they say during the competition that the students of Neely University tortured their University's children until their lungs hurt? Sigh, I can't explain it in one sentence. By the way, is Bai Yunj with you? Huang Zui asked. Yes. Huang Zui said, then let her sit in my seat and help me score. Professor Liang, what? Isn't she a substitute in your class? Hearing this, Huang Zui sneered, substitute? Even if she's a substitute, it won't be glorious even if our class wins. Cut the crap. Put Bai Yunj on the phone. When Professor Liang heard this, he had no choice but to call Bai Yunj over to answer the phone. Huang Zui only said, I have already told the other professors that you will take my place. Don't be afraid when I'm not around. Keep an eye on your students and don't let them bully you. If anyone wants to target you, I'll come back immediately and deal with them. After that, Huang Zui hung up. Bai Yunj, Professor Liang also looked at Bai Yunj curiously. He wondered how capable Bai Yunj was to make the arrogant Huang Zui treat her differently. What did Professor Huang say? Bai Yunj glanced at him. Let me give him a score. Soon. Everyone saw that not long after Professor Liang and Bai Yunj's discussion, Bai Yunj, who was a substitute, did not go to Class 1's team. Instead, she followed Professor Liang and sat on Huang Zui's chair. Everyone's eyes widened in disbelief when they saw this scene. The atmosphere suddenly exploded. Why was Bai Yunj sitting on the professor's chair? Hai Ning, the leader of Class 1, was also shocked. But then, Professor Liang announced, everyone, Professor Huang Zui has something on and can't leave. Hence, student pay will be Professor Huang's judge. Chapter 1267. What the F***CK? Is the top scorer's father a god? This is the first time I've heard of a freshman replacing her professor. Sorry to bother you, but I'm afraid I'll never be able to sit in that position in my life. The top scorer's father is too strong, right? There was a heated discussion below the stage, but Pei Yunja's expression was calm. She casually flipped through these documents, but she seemed indifferent. The other professors did not expect Huang Zui to find a young girl to replace him. Okay, let's continue with the competition. After Professor Liang finished speaking, the contestants on the stage all had ugly expressions. Who wouldn't feel uncomfortable when they saw a freshman sitting in the professor's seat while they were just a contestant? Hai Ning's eyes were red and she could not help but tremble. She felt a burning pain on her face. She thought that she had finally beaten Bei Yunj and won the position of the team leader. She was smug. But what was the result? Bei Yunj was replacing Professor Huang as a judge. Hai Ning swallowed her anger. The other professors waited for the competition to start and began to have their own thoughts. Everyone looked at the last 3 classes. Their professors were more or less protective of their own students or deliberately made things difficult for the students from other classes. For example, Class 1. At this moment, Huang Zui was not here. The professors did not take Bei Yunj seriously and even deducted the points of Class 1 until they were almost only at the basic level. The students in Class 1 were so angry that they shouted that it was unfair. However, Bei Yunj was very calm as if nothing had happened. Hai Ning sneered. What's the use of letting her replace Professor Huang? Class 1 was not the target of the professor's attacks. They were maliciously deducted points. However, when the next group of contestants started their oral defense, the professors in Class 5 were on good terms with the other professors, so they only asked the more basic questions. Without a doubt. If this was the case, Class 5's final score would definitely be much higher than Class 1's. But just when everyone thought that the result was predictable, Bei Yunj suddenly spoke. She asked politely, "Can I ask a few questions?" The other professors did not think much of it. How could a freshman ask any technical questions? Of course. Aren't you replacing Professor Huang? The other professors were very polite. At this moment, the leader of Class 5 raised his eyebrows at Bei Yunj. If there's anything you don't understand, feel free to ask. The leader of Class 5 also found the person sitting on the teacher's seat unpleasant to the eye, so he was secretly competing with him. He was confident that Bei Yunj was not much stronger than him. Sure. Bei Yunj nodded in response. Then, he slowly flipped through their information book and began to ask questions at a moderate pace. However, when the first question was thrown out, the smile of the leader of Class 5 froze. The other professors' faces turned pale as they turned to look at Bei Yunj, who was still smiling. At this moment, they were completely shocked. How good could that old thing Huang Zui be? How could he find someone easy to bully and let the other classes take advantage of him? After Bei Yunj asked 4 or 5 questions and the note-taker wrote down the questions on the PowerPoint, the professors' expressions were extremely ugly. These questions were so tricky that they might not even be able to answer them. Not to mention these freshmen. Bei Yunj, these questions of yours, however, before the professor could finish, Bei Yunj interrupted him and said without blushing, "The professors are so nice to my class because they like students like me who love to ask questions. You won't be angry, right?" Chapter 1268. The professors had just suppressed their anger when they heard Bei Yunj intentionally or unintentionally move closer to the microphone. "I'm just a student. Professors, don't be calculative with me." The students below the stage heard it clearly. What kind of ruthless person was the top scorer's father? Even the professors of the department were being deceived? The professors were speechless. Compared to Huang Zui, who lost his temper at the slightest disagreement, Huang Zui's student was simply King evil. "You can't answer these questions?" Bei Yunj turned her head and her gaze fell on the leader of Class 5. She leaned lazily on the table with one hand and suddenly leaned closer to the microphone. Her voice was low and pleasant as she spat out an obscure foreign language. Only the professors could tell that this was a classic foreign literature about the topic of the contestants of Class 5. If ordinary students wanted to borrow foreign literature, they would have to spend a lot of energy to understand these academic terms. Even they did not have the energy to memorize the foreign literature word for word. However, when they picked up their phones to check, what Bei Yunj said matched up word for word. A few graduate students who joined in the fun were shocked. F***CK, this is this year's top scorer? She's even more ridiculous than our top scorer. This is a literature written by Mancheston in our nation 30 years ago, right? I happened to do this topic before and spent half a month looking up the information. There's actually a big shot who can recite it directly. What? The others could not help but gasp. They originally thought that this year's top scorer was the worst and that the alumni group was full of negative comments about Bei Yunj. In the end, she was not even on the same level as them. The students of Class 1 looked at Bei Yunj's side profile on the stage and their collective sense of honor was instantly ignited. They could not help but straighten their backs. Wasn't the most powerful big shot in their class? Moreover, seeing Bei Yunj on the stage not giving the professors any face, the students of Class 1 felt inexplicably relieved. Suddenly, they had a feeling that as long as Bei Yunj was around, no accidents would happen. However, the professors were so angry that they wanted to tear Huang Zui apart. After Bei Yunj's fuss, they could not even give Class 5 the basic points. Even the other topics of the other classes, Bei Yunj was like a walking literature library. It made people start to doubt their lives and they could not answer a single question. At this moment, the other freshmen also had complicated feelings. They were all freshmen of Yun University. How could there be such a ridiculous gap? After the competition that made people doubt their lives, no one had any enthusiasm for the champion or the runner-up. Instead, they began to think in a daze, so the one who was making up the numbers in the world was actually me? Class 5 still won first place, but they weren't very happy. After all, not everyone participated in the competition. There was another student of the same grade as them was their judge. What? It's really strange. Some people haven't won any awards, right? How can she replace the professors? The leader of Class 5 sneered. Besides, our theme has already been reported. It shouldn't be difficult to memorize some foreign languages, right? Hearing this, many people in Class 1 wanted to rush up and tear this person's mouth apart. It's not difficult to memorize some foreign languages. You've been preparing for half a month. Why can't you memorize it? Song Yao's originally gentle tone gave people a tenacious attitude, making them speechless. You. The leader of Class 5's face flushed red. At this moment, Hai Ning, who was beside him, spoke casually. Chapter 1269. No wonder Bei Yunj didn't participate in the training even though she was a substitute. Hai Ning turned around and smiled. I really didn't expect things to turn out like this. Hai Ning, we're from the same class. Do you have to say that? The other contestants frowned. It was one thing for the other classes to tear Bei Yunj apart, but why was Hai Ning's brain so muddled? Did I say something wrong? Hai Ning looked calm, but her hands were trembling under her sleeves. Bei Yunj had become the judge of her competition, but she didn't even get first place. She only got second place. She could already imagine how those people in the class who didn't like her would mock her behind her back. As soon as she finished speaking, suddenly, there was a commotion in the crowd. Why is it you again? Everyone turned around and saw a gray-haired foreign man. He was dressed very nicely and wore a pair of glasses. Bei Yunj turned to look at him and raised her eyebrows. She had some impression of this person. This was a professor from the physics department of Neely University. She had met him once before. When you were in your second year of high school, our physics and mathematics department gave you an offer, right? I didn't expect you to go to Yun University. The professor didn't hide his love for Bei Yunj at all. When he looked at Bei Yunj, he was all smiles. It wasn't like his cold and serious expression just now. Neely University is too far away. Bei Yunja's tone was still perfunctory, but her beautiful eyes were curved, making people have a good impression of her. It's quite far. The professor from Neely University nodded thoughtfully and deliberately said, but the school you chose is quite interesting. A genius like you would definitely be highly sought after in our Neely University. But how can you be a freshman substitute here? Why don't you consider transferring to our Neely University? The scholarship will definitely be generous. With that, the smiles of the principal, dean, and professors froze. They didn't expect Neely University to be so shameless. What nonsense was he saying in front of them? Professor Lei Jun, isn't it inappropriate for you to poach someone in front of us? The principal of Yun University smiled insincerely. Professor Lei Jun was extremely arrogant. Is poaching someone dirty? Why did they have to dig in secret? In my eyes, isn't this the treatment a genius deserves? Since your school doesn't respect geniuses, why don't you send her to a more suitable school? No one had expected that the two top universities would actually tear each other apart over a student. Seeing this scene, Hai Ning couldn't help but clench her fists. Her eyes began to turn red with jealousy, and her whole body trembled. Neely University was the #1 elite school in the world. Even the students of Neely University were very willing to go to Neely University to further their studies. How could such a school offer Bei Yunj, who was in her second year of high school? Hai Ning's mind was burning with anger and jealousy, and she couldn't help but blurt out. Classmate Pei, were you that good in high school? It seems that classmate Pei was too low-key. As his roommate, I didn't realize it. However, I really want to see classmate Pei's ability with my own eyes. Speaking of this, Hai Ning deliberately smiled at Bei Yunj. But suddenly, the next moment, Professor Lei Jun laughed in disbelief. Are all the students of Yun University so naive? The principal and the rest didn't look too good. How could they not understand what he meant? Are all the students of Yun University so ignorant? Chapter 1270. That's strange. In the debate, Bei Yunj defeated our Neely University's graduate students alone. What else do we need to see with our own eyes? Professor Lei Jun's tone was mocking as he mocked Hai Ning mercilessly. Instantly, Hai Ning's face turned pale. What? Hai Ning's voice trembled slightly as she clenched her fists subconsciously. Bei Yunj defeated the Neely University's graduate students? However, someone had clearly come over just now and said that their senior brother and sister had been beaten up by the Neely University students today. But why was it that Bei Yunj had defeated the Neely University's graduate students? At this moment, there was an uproar below the stage. How is that possible? A freshman defeated the Neely University's graduate students? I heard that there are 2 big shots in there. Someone couldn't help but exclaim. It's Jasmine and Titch, right? Half an hour ago, I heard from my senior that Yun University was crushed by Neely University this time. In the end, there was such a reversal. This is too ridiculous. The top scholar's father is still the top scholar's father. The surrounding discussions made Hai Ning feel even more ashamed and her expression turned even uglier. Especially Meng Wenwen, who had looked down on Bei Yunj before choosing Hai Ning in the end. Her pupils constricted as she subconsciously shook her head. How is that possible? How is that possible? How could Bei Yunj have defeated the group of graduate students from Neely University? They were the elites of the elite schools. If she hadn't chosen to join Hai Ning's group because she thought that Bei Yunj was weak, would she have been able to use Bei Yunj's halo to do well at Yun University? At the thought of this, Meng Wenwen couldn't help but glance at Su Xianing and the others who were chatting with Bei Yunj. She couldn't help but bite her lip. The regret and frustration in her heart couldn't dissipate. However, not long after, the news of Bei Yunj tearing apart the entire team of graduate students from Neely University spread throughout the school. Some people also started to guess who would be able to pluck a beautiful and terrifying flower like the top scholar's father. On the forum, even Lu Yuanxi and Chu Zhixing were popular candidates for Bei Yunj's official matchmaking. However, because Bei Yunj sent Song Yao to the school building with an umbrella, there was a sudden gust of evil wind in the forum and the popularity of the Song Yao group soared that night. She completely suppressed the other popular male leads. In the dormitory. As soon as Bei Yunj pushed the door open, she saw Hai Ning crying. Chao Yingying comforted her, but she didn't say a word when she saw Bei Yunj. But she also seemed to be condemning Bei Yunj with her eyes. It was as if all this was because of Bei Yunj. Bei Yunj turned a blind eye and was about to take a shower when she saw Hai Ning suddenly stand up and stare at her with red eyes. Bei Yunj, why didn't you tell me? Bei Yunj raised his eyebrows and didn't say a word. He quietly waited for Hai Ning to say something else. Have you always found him an eyesore? Is that why you deliberately embarrassed me? Hai Ning laughed coldly. You're not as indifferent as you look on the surface. Otherwise, you wouldn't be so close to Lu Yuanci and Song Yao, right? Oh, that's true. I heard from the music faculty that Song Yao is a habitual offender. What's slutty? Her strength was hidden in her bones. Before she could finish speaking, Bei Yunj suddenly took a few steps forward and pressed her down to sit down. Hai Ning looked up and met Bei Yunj's fierce eyes. There was a faint smile on her face, but it was very cold. Continue. I'm listening. The surrounding atmosphere was terrifying. Chapter 1271. Bei Yunj, what are you trying to do? Chao Yingying mustered up her courage and asked. But the next moment, Bei Yunj glanced at her coldly and Chao Yingying didn't dare to say another word. Bei Yunj sneered and turned to look at Hai Ning's pale face. Hai Ning's fearful eyes seemed to be saying that the person in front of her was a lunatic, and those who didn't know what was going on would think that Bei Yunj was doing something violent to Hai Ning. You're not going to continue? Then I'll continue. Bei Yunj turned around and leaned forward with one hand on the armrest of the chair. The smile in his eyes made one's scalp tingle. Do you think I'm a lunatic? Then why don't you know that a lunatic has no bottom line? After saying that, Bei Yunj straightened her back and pulled a towel from the side. She slowly wiped her hands and threw it at Hai Ning's face. Hai Ning trembled. The girl tilted her head and glanced at her coldly. She was unruly and arrogant. Su Xianing entered the dormitory with a book of questions and saw this scene. What was going on? Was she being lectured by a big shot? Chao Yingying, who was usually the most arrogant, couldn't even let out a fart. Bei Yunj, what are you doing? Su Xianing wasn't afraid of Bei Yunj because she knew that as long as she didn't touch Bei Yunj's bottom line, Bei Yunj's temper was very good. However, Bei Yunj was probably in a bad mood today. He glanced at her and said casually, what can I do? Do you? Su Xianing, Bei Yunj, this B** starred, was simply too much. So flirtatious. After saying that, Bei Yunj took his clothes and went to take a shower, leaving Su Xianing scolding him. After taking a shower, when Bei Yunj walked out, he found that Hai Ning and the others were gone. Only Su Xianing was left. I just heard Hai Ning say that she is preparing to move out of the dormitory. Did you deal with her? Su Xianing asked. Bei Yunj sighed and leaned lazily against the door to think about it. Maybe. Su Xianing, I'll go downstairs to buy something later. What do you want to eat? Bei Yunj was wiping her wet black hair. Her aura was cold and pleasant. Mango. Su Xianing raised her head abruptly. Bei Yunj glanced at her, then turned back and said lightly, no, change it. Su Xianing was instantly angry. Do you want to go against me? Bei Yunj put on his jacket and picked up his phone. He looked at her leisurely and said, I don't want to hear you crying in pain by my side tomorrow, as if I did something wrong. These words made Su Xianing remember that these 2 days were her period. Last time, because she ate a mango, she was in so much pain that she cried in her bed. She thought that no one had heard about it. No wonder Bei Yunj brought her a week's worth of brown sugar ginger tea and said that the supermarket next door gave it to her for a promotion. Then I want the ginger tea you bought last time. Su Xianing hugged the pillow awkwardly. Bei Yunj glanced at her, nodded softly and went out. In fact, many people did not know that Su Xianing and Bei Yunj had such a good relationship. In particular, many people in Yunqing High School knew that Su Xianing hated Bei Yunj very much. There were even people on the forum who made bets about when Bei Yunj would beat up Su Xianing, who had a bad temper. In the end, who would have thought that the big boss would bring her roommate brown sugar ginger tea every month? Chapter 1272. After Bei Yunj went out, she bought a big bag of brown sugar ginger tea, wine, and cigarettes from the supermarket. However, when she sat by the river and snapped back to her senses, she realized that she was not holding cigarettes, but candy. She licked her lips and casually unwrapped a piece of candy. However, she was thinking about the project that was difficult to get closer to. Bei Yunj was indeed not in a good mood these 2 days because she was at a bottleneck. Everyone had a bottleneck period, and she was no exception. In her previous life, when she was at a bottleneck, she had only stopped experimenting for half a year. However, there were already rumors that she had run out of ideas. This time, Zhong Xinglin wanted her to relax for a year or two before coming back to break through the bottleneck. After all, Bei Yunj was still too young, and her research results in the past 2 years were indeed shocking. If there was no bottleneck period, could she still be considered human? As for those who knew that she was at a bottleneck, only Si Qingyan was very happy because Bei Yunj was so bored that she could go to the laboratory to help him. A year or two, Bei Yunj closed her eyes, feeling a little lost. If she gave up on her research, what else could she do? Until the next moment. Bei Yunj had just stood up and was about to go back when a large black shadow appeared out of nowhere and almost pounced on Bei Yunj. She turned around and saw that it was a lass, who had not been successful in losing weight. Bei Yunj looked back and saw the male owner who had allowed the dog to commit murder. Her eyes flickered slightly as she looked up at the man not far away. The man was dressed very casually in a simple white t-shirt and short-sleeved shirt. He looked like a classy senior in school, but he was constantly attracting the attention of the people around him. Bei Yunja's hand stopped and she forgot to stroke a lass's fur. She stared blankly at the man's upturned eyes under the sparkling moonlight. His eyes were dark and there was a faint smile on his face. There was a hint of laziness and frivolity. "Didn't you say that whoever has food is a father?" The man looked at a lass, raised his eyebrows, and sneered. "He still hasn't acknowledged me. I've raised him for nothing." Bei Yunj snapped back to her senses and asked instinctively, "Are you done?" "Yes." The man responded and took a step forward. Before he could take out what he was hiding behind his back, Bei Yunj suddenly stood up. She walked forward and hugged the man's strong waist. The man was also stunned for a moment. Then, he couldn't help but chuckle. He reached out and rubbed the girl's head as if to comfort her. "You haven't been able to get through to me for 7 days, and you're taking advantage of me as soon as we meet. Yin." When Bei Yunj heard this, she realized that her phone might have been in arrears. "Don't you have something to do overseas?" When the words came out of her mouth, Bei Yunj subconsciously glanced at Huashidu again. She thought her tone was quite cold. However, in the man's eyes, it was more like she was acting coquettishly. "What?" Huashidu bent down and leaned closer to her, pretending that he did not hear her clearly. The cold and familiar scent made one's heart pound like a drum. Bei Yunj immediately thought of the kissing scene in the Japanese drama that her roommates had watched before. Before this, Bei Yunj had always thought that such cultural passion was free. However, at this moment, Bei Yunj's expression did not look too good. "How did you greet people when you were in the Fernan's family?" "Huh?" Huashida glanced at Bei Yunj and quickly reacted. The corners of his thin red lips curled up again. An ordinary kissing ceremony. Bei Yunj, this man was not manly. "How many have you kissed?" Bei Yunj looked straight at him. Chapter 1273. Huashidu suppressed the smile on his lips and said to her, "I've never counted." Bei Yunja's good-looking face was stiff, but because of the anger in her eyes, it inexplicably became more lively. But actually, Huashidu saw that he was almost done teasing her. He bent down and stared straight at his little girl. His slender and well-defined hand gently lifted her chin. The next moment, before Bei Yunj could react, the man suddenly leaned close to her and kissed her cheek gently with his thin red lips. He left behind a warm and heart-trembling sensation. Without waiting for her to react, the man curled his lips and turned sideways again to kiss Bei Yunja's other cheek. At this moment, Bei Yunja's mind was in a mess and her entire body stiffened. However, the man licked the corner of his lips and the sound of his chuckle landed beside Bei Yunja's ear. It was even more ambiguous and lecherous as he used his fingers to gently wipe the cheek that he had just kissed. "I've only kissed one person since I became an adult. I still don't really remember." The man's low and magnetic voice was bewitching and deadly. His peach blossom eyes were deep and dark as he stared straight at her moist red lips. "Was this how you kissed me just now, Yunyun?" Instantly, Bei Yunj felt her ears burning. Seeing that she was silent, the man asked knowingly, "What's wrong?" Bei Yunj did not even raise her head. Her tone sounded very calm. "Shameless." Soon, the man could not help but laugh. He unconsciously bent down and gently leaned his head against Bei Yunja's neck. The light laughter and the man's slightly trembling shoulders made Bei Yunja's ears even hotter. "What?" The man's peach blossom eyes were filled with smiles, as if he was constantly flirting with her. "You're shameless like this? Yunyun, you're too strict with me." As soon as he finished speaking, Bei Yunj finally reacted. She was surrounded by young couples who were kissing passionately. Bei Yunj, who suddenly came to her senses, suddenly remembered that this was the sacred dating ground for couples at Yun University. He had unknowingly walked here just now. But soon, Bei Yunj looked up at Huashidu. "Why are you here?" When the man heard this, his laughter faded. He lazily scratched her chin. "Isn't that what I should be asking you?" Bei Yunj, when he first came over, Huashidu also saw a few boys holding roses and following behind Bei Yunj. However, Bei Yunj was eating candy and sitting by the bridge. No one knew what she was thinking. She looked impatient, so no one dared to go over. "This flower is for me?" Bei Yunj saw the flowers in Huashidu's hands and quietly changed the topic. At the same time, she took the large bouquet of roses from the man's hands. When the surrounding people accidentally saw this scene, they almost cried out in surprise. Was the one by the riverside in the dating Holy Land the top scorer of this batch of freshmen? However, Bei Yunj frowned. She did not like other people paying attention to Huashidu, so she simply pulled Huashidu along another dimly lit path. However, the large bouquet of roses blocked her view. Bei Yunj accidentally stepped on a smooth cobblestone and almost fell. However, a moment ago, the man casually supported Bei Yunj's forearm. Bei Yunj also subconsciously hugged Huashidu's waist. She could even feel the man's firm and warm abs. Pei Qian had a bad feeling. As expected. Then, she heard the man ask slowly, "What are you doing, Yunyun?" Then, the man's light words entered Bei Yunj's ears. "Pervert." Bei Yunj. Chapter 1274. Bei Yunj's eyelids twitched. Before she could say anything, she heard the man's next sentence with a slow chuckle. "Yunyun, I understand that you're young and impetuous, but you're too impatient. You can do whatever you want when we get to the apartment." Bei Yunj, what nonsense was he talking about? However, in the next moment, Bei Yunj suddenly remembered the brown sugar ginger tea in her bag. "No, I want to go back to the dormitory." Huashidu turned to look at her, as if waiting for her to explain the reason. My roommate wants to drink brown sugar ginger tea. Bei Yunj looked at her watch and carried a big bouquet of roses. She handed the dog leash to Washidu and turned to leave quickly. Brother, I'll look for you for dinner tomorrow. The man stood where he was and watched the girl leave. His good-looking eyebrows slowly raised. Then, he lowered his head and looked at Alas. He squatted down and scratched Alas's chin with his well-defined hand. He said casually and lazily, "Tell me, why did you follow such a little scumbag?" No one knew if he was a human or a dog when he said this. On that day, the people on the forum went crazy. Their Yin University's school bell was actually having a private meeting with someone in the sacred land of lovers. However, the photos that everyone took were not very clear. They could only see that the other party was good-looking from a blurry perspective. He had completely crushed their school hunk, Ching Zihuai. When did our school have such a handsome guy? The top scholar's father's eyes are so sharp. Through the original poster's high-resolution lens, I can feel that the senior is so handsome. But isn't our school hunk Ching Zihuai? But the looks of the top scholar's father directly beat all the boys in the school. Crying face, what do you mean, upstairs? This is too much. Although the upstairs' words are very hurtful, he is indeed so handsome. When I walked past him, the senior was so handsome that my heart raced. I forgot to secretly take photos. He's definitely not from our school. He might be a senior from Beichuan next door. I have to hurry and ask my best friend in Beichuan. However, the onlookers searched for an entire night, but they could not find this handsome senior on Beichuan University's forum. On the other side. As soon as Bei Yunj returned to the dormitory, Su Xianing was lying on the bed without a care for her image. Her face was oily as she played games. Come down and drink. Bei Yunj threw the plastic bag on the table. His tone was no different from calling a dog. Su Xianing did not mind. Daddy Pei, help me soak. Bei Yunj squinted at her. Is your hand broken? I'm playing games. Bei Yunj put down her backpack and tore open the packaging with one hand. She made ginger tea for Su Xianing and replied to Washida's message. Not long after. Out of the corner of her eye, Su Xianing saw a big bouquet of roses on Bei Yunj's table. A rose of such quality would probably be priceless. Su Xianing lowered her head and continued to play the game. However, she was muttering in her heart, guys nowadays are really willing to spend a lot of money to chase after goddesses. However, it was also the first time that Bei Yunj was willing to accept flowers. It was quite strange. However, Su Xianing did not expect that her roommate, who was so arrogant every day, would reject the temptation of a man just to come back and make ginger tea for her. After playing the game, Su Xianing browsed the forum and got out of bed to get the ginger tea. Only then did she see a post by Bei Yunj. A few minutes later. Su Xianing froze and slowly turned to look at Bei Yunj. Bei Yunj, did your boyfriend give you those roses? Chapter 1275. Bei Yunj paused for a moment before she glanced at her calmly and said slowly, "What's the matter?" Wasn't not denying it equivalent to admitting it? Su Xianing's emotions were complicated. Then where's your boyfriend? I asked him to go back. Doesn't he have to bring you ginger tea? Su Xianing suddenly felt like a green tea who had interfered in someone else's relationship. However, she did not expect that Bei Yunj would ask her boyfriend to go back just to bring her ginger tea. What kind of immortal roommate relationship was this? Your boyfriend didn't say anything? Su Xianing's tone was even more complicated. What should I say? Bei Yunj was playing with her phone. After asking the question, she finally regained her senses. She suddenly recalled the scene just now. She seemed to be a little jerk. Su Xianing flipped through the post and asked curiously for first-hand information. Bei Yunj, which university is your boyfriend from? Which year is he in? He graduated a long time ago. He's a student of Neely University. Bei Yunja's mind flashed across the Neely University trophy that old Madame Hua had left behind in the Hua family's old residence. Neely University? Damn, he's also a straight-A student. Su Xianing's eyes lit up with the flames of gossip. She immediately went to Neely University's forum to take a look. I reckon that with your boyfriend's looks, he's definitely the most handsome guy in Neely University. Don't be too concerned about him. Bei Yunj glanced at her lazily and smiled. He's mine. Su Xianing was speechless. So this was not a research big shot who had cut off her love. I have an engagement partner, okay? I'm just curious. Su Xianing raised her head proudly, but after flipping through the posts on Neely University's forum, she was shocked. Wait. Bei Yunj, what's your boyfriend's name? Su Xianing was so shocked that she was almost speechless. She had a feeling that that blurry back view resembled the young CEO of the Hua Corporation, Hua Shidu. Bei Yunj licked her lips. However, he's not considered my boyfriend. He's not your boyfriend? Bei Yunj, is it a waste that you have such a seductive face? After Su Xianing finished speaking, she grabbed Bei Yunja's hand and said, let's go. Charge. If you don't rush, someone will rush in front of you. Bei Yunj raised her eyebrows. Why are you so excited? Aren't I worried for you? Look at your boyfriend's popularity. He has graduated for so many years, but there are still people who can't forget him. After that, Su Xianing handed the phone to Bei Yunj. Bei Yunj took the phone and looked up to see a picture of a man in his late teens. The angle of the photo was obviously a candid shot. The 18 or 19-year-old boy was wearing a refreshing white t-shirt and a black wristband on his wrist. His wet hair was swept back lazily after playing basketball. Through the photo, the boy's playful and lazy peach blossom eyes were electrifying. Compared to the current him, he was even more immature. His eyes were full of vigor, and his youthful aura made people unable to take their eyes off him. It was like an existence of light. Even if such a young man was just passing by, he could make an 18-year-old girl's heart flutter. Indeed, no matter what age or where this man was, he could easily seduce a young girl's soul. After being stunned for a moment, Bei Yunj scrolled down. They were all girls who had confessed to Hua Shidu. From a few years ago until now, there were more than 10,000 posts. Perhaps to some people, the most unforgettable memory of Neely University was this man. Su Xianing was still nagging. To be honest, you have good taste. Such a man is the ideal of the world. Chapter 1276. But you're really something. You can even push such a man aside and not accept his temptation. Are you the female version of Liu Xiahui? Su Xianing kept praising her when she realized that Bei Yunj was slowly looking up at her. The two of them suddenly looked at each other and the atmosphere fell silent. Su Xianing was speechless. Bei Yunj slowly closed the forum, not letting Su Xianing see it. She heard Pei Shishir say, "Student Su, it wasn't easy for us to cultivate such a small friendship. It's better for you to speak less." Su Xianing was speechless. After sleeping on the bed, with one hand behind her head, Bei Yunj casually opened Yun University's forum with her mind wandering. She happened to see the post that had secretly taken photos of her and Hua Shidu. Although it was not taken clearly, it did not stop the girls from Yun University from being enthusiastic about Hua Shidu. F***ck, he's so handsome in such a high-resolution photo that I'm speechless. I'm confident enough to call him hubby. I'm about to faint. Why is he so handsome? Thank you, my heart is racing. Cover mouth and cry, isn't it just a matter of brother hooking his finger? Ha 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 ha, sister above, calm down. Consider the feelings of the top scholar's father. I'm dying of laughter. The arts department is saying that Bei Yunj is sticking to Qing Zihuai. I don't believe it. How blind must she be to give up on such a crazy man? Looking at the netizens on the forum begging for the same thing as her, Bei Yunj was speechless. A few minutes later, he had just changed into his sleeping robe when Hwashidu, who was working, suddenly received a message. He opened it and saw that it was a message from someone. "Brother, don't come to my school next time. It's a little hurtful." Hwashidu was speechless. What was this child thinking all day long? The next day, Bei Yunj took the party score she had just written and was about to try it out with Song Yao. However, she did not expect to see a group of onlookers on the way. Some people were raising their phones high to take photos. It was obvious that they were joining in the fun. Bei Yunj was not interested. She was about to leave when she heard the boy shout. "Song Yao. Ever since I met you, I can't fall in love with anyone else. Can I be your boyfriend?" With that said, the boy knelt down on one knee and handed the flowers to Song Yao. Everyone around him was cheering. "Promise him. Promise him." Song Yao's expression was not good. She pursed her lips and looked unhappy. The boy who openly confessed was the current president of the student union, Hu Ji. He was average-looking and slightly plump, but because he was liked by the teachers, there were many people who complimented him. "I'm sorry, but I don't have any thoughts about relationships right now." Song Yao had just finished speaking when Qin Yojiao, who was wearing a black lace dress, laughed. "Song Yao, why don't you agree first? It's not good to reject him in public." The sarcasm and gloating in Yu Ling's eyes could not be hidden anymore. "Yes, Hu Ji's family is quite rich. Besides, he likes you so much. Song Yao, you should know what's good for you." As a female artiste, Song Yao was quite famous online. If she did not handle it well, Song Yao would definitely be the one scolded. "I won't accept the flowers, and I don't plan to accept the person either. Senior Hu, do you understand?" Song Yao asked calmly. These words made Hu Ji's face turn red. Previously, he had even bragged to his friends that his family background was good and he would definitely be able to take Song Yao down. "Anyway, I'm giving this to you." Since Song Yao did not agree, Hu Ji insisted. Chapter 1277. Song Yao was suddenly stuffed with a large bouquet of flowers and Hu Ji reached out to grab Song Yao's arm tightly. Looking at this scene, those who did not know would think that Song Yao had agreed. But in fact, Song Yao could not break free at all. "Hu Ji, let go." Song Yao's expression darkened. "Song Yao, Hu Ji really likes you." Qin Yojiao smiled coquettishly. "Don't be embarrassed." Only Qin Yojiao knew in her heart that she just couldn't stand these people who were close to Bei Yunj and was taking the opportunity to add insult to injury. Relying on his strength, Hu Ji pulled Song Yao's hand until it was red. He turned around and smiled at everyone. "Thank you for your blessings. I can be with Song Yao, suddenly." Before he could finish speaking, Bei Yunj, who had walked over from behind, raised his leg and kicked Hu Ji's but ruthlessly without giving him any face. Hu Ji was caught off guard and fell to the ground in a disheveled state. He screamed. Song Yao had just turned around and before she could react, she heard Bei Yunj say calmly, but his voice was cold. "Give me the flowers." Song Yao gave them to Bei Yunj instinctively. However, in the next second, Bei Yunj took the bouquet of flowers, grabbed Hu Ji's collar with one hand and slapped him. "Classmate, do you know how long she has been with me? Did I agree to be with you?" Bei Yunj slapped him twice and threw the flowers into the rubbish bin ruthlessly. The sound made the crowd who had been watching the commotion tremble in fear. The entire scene was out of control. Who else would dare to be so arrogant as to hit someone in Yin University? There were also people who filmed this scene. Hu Ji's expression did not look good. He felt that it was very embarrassing to be hit by a woman. He was about to do something when Bei Yunj suddenly punched him in the abdomen. Hu Ji's face twitched in pain. "You're quite brave. Are you going to hit me?" Bei Yunj laughed and slowly moved his joints. "Bei Yunj, I'm the president of the student union. My father has a relationship with the Qin family, before Hu Ji could finish his sentence, Bei Yunj grabbed him by the collar and dragged him straight to the fountain. Before he could finish speaking, Bei Yunj pressed Hu Ji's head with one hand and pushed his head into the fountain. Bei Yunj only pulled Hu Ji up after he choked until he was trembling all over. "Who's your father?" "Say it again," Bei Yunj asked slowly. At this moment, Hu Ji's expression was one of terror as he shook his head frantically. "Very good." Bei Yunj nodded. Then, he grabbed the drenched Hu Ji and threw him directly in front of Yuling. Yuling was so scared that she screamed. "I didn't agree. Song Yao can't be with anyone she wants. But since Yuling loves him so much, why don't they just get together?" Bei Yunj's question made Yuling's face turn pale. Then, Bei Yunj continued to look at Qin Youjiao. "Or, our classmate Qin Youjiao." Qin Youjiao smiled with a pale face. "Bei Yunj, don't joke around. What's there to be embarrassed about?" Bei Yunj said cynically, "It's not good to reject him in public. My Tian can't agree to him. Why don't student Qin be kind?" Qin Youjiao's face was livid. She knew that Bei Yunj was using her words just now to shut her up. "Or, if student Qin Youjiao isn't willing, why don't you join the crowd just now?" Bei Yunj grabbed Hu Ji's collar and questioned them one by one. Then, he sneered. "Why? Weren't they all living bodhisattvas who crawled out of the temple just now? Is it your turn to be unhappy?" Chapter 1278. Seeing this, the others dispelled the thought of using the same method to woo their goddess. Bei Yunj licked the corner of his lips and chuckled softly. He slowly glanced at the others. "Is there anyone else who likes my Tian? She's busy, so you don't have to ask her in the future. You can just ask me." However, when everyone thought of the scene of Bei Yunj hitting someone just now, they felt a chill run down their spines. Who the f***ck would dare to pursue Song Yao? Yunj, Song Yao's long eyelashes fluttered before she walked in front of Bei Yunj. At first, everyone thought that Song Yao would comfort Bei Yunj and persuade them to stop the fight. However, they did not expect Song Yao to hand them a handkerchief. She frowned and said, "Wipe yourself first. You're all wet." Everyone was speechless. "Sister Yao, wake up." Was she treating the purebred devil as a little puppy? Bei Yunj wiped himself twice before his eyes landed on Hu Ji carelessly, looking at him with a faint smile. Bei Yunj's smile was unbelievably beautiful, but everyone present shivered. Hu Ji's legs almost turned to jelly and he ran away when no one was paying attention. At this moment, not far away, Lu Yuanxi saw a group of people gathered outside. In the middle of them was Bei Yunj. "Bei Yunj, what are you doing? Where's the proposal?" Bei Yunj was speechless. Song Yao was speechless. Lu Yuanxi looked up and saw that the person beside him was Song Yao. He suddenly felt the strange gazes around him. "I'm joking." Lu Yuanxi's smile froze as he explained, but to the others, it felt like he was trying to hide something. "I've finished writing the score. Come and listen to it. See if there's anything that needs to be changed." With that said, Lu Yuanxi and Song Yao's eyelids twitched. They looked at each other, feeling a little helpless at the big boss's confidence. What should they say later so that it wouldn't hurt the big boss's heart? Hearing this, a trace of ridicule flashed past Qin Youjiao's eyes as she stared at Bei Yunj's departing figure. An original score? Bei Yunj, since you like to compete with me so much, let's see how long you can be arrogant for. In the rehearsal hall. After Bei Yunj handed the score to Lu Yuanxi and Song Yao, their eyes flickered and they refused to open her score. She was silent for a moment and looked at the two with a faint smile. "What do you mean? Do you think my music score is bad?" Lu Yuanxi, No, Master Pei, you're omnipotent. Why would I think that? However, Master Pei, the gala this time is more important. Why don't we change the score? Before he could finish his sentence, Song Yao interrupted her. Let's try Yunji's score first. Lu Yuanci turned back to look at Song Yao. Sister Yao, aren't you indulging Bei Yunj too much? Who knew what Bei Yunj could write? She still wanted to give it a try. Then I'll play a part for you guys to listen to. With that said, Bei Yunj sat in front of the piano, her slender and good-looking fingers dancing on the black and white keys. When the first part of the piano sounded, Lu Yuanci and Song Yao were stunned and instinctively looked at the person playing the piano. What was going on? Did Bei Yunj really know how to arrange music? Although they did not know how to arrange music, listening to this piece of music, they knew that Bei Yunj's style was mature and even higher than those people from the International Musicians Association, until the entire song ended. Bei Yunj then said slowly, I don't have much time recently, so I changed the old song I wrote previously and added some new things. If you don't like it, I'll release another version in the next 2 days. Chapter 1279. Wait a minute, did you write this yourself? After Lu Yuanci regained his senses, he asked in disbelief. Bei Yunj turned around and smiled. Brother Lu, do you not understand human language after studying in university? Lu Yuanci was speechless. It was not easy for him to maintain this friendship. Suddenly, Song Yao said, I think it's very nice. Why don't we try it? Okay. Bei Yunj nodded and sat in front of the piano to teach Song Yao slowly. Not long after, Lu Yuanci looked at Bei Yunj and Song Yao playing together and felt that he was the extra one on the field. Lu Yuanci turned around expressionlessly and started to play the violin in front of the score. After the three of them finished their training and left, someone sneaked into the training hall and looked around before taking the tape recorder that had been prepared in the corner. How is it? Did you get Bei Yunj's score? Qin Yojiao could not hide the darkness in her eyes. She still wanted to ensure that nothing would go wrong with this performance. Yuling handed the USB flash drive to Qin Yojiao and played with her hair as she raised her chin. I just got someone to record it. Listen to it. A trace of disdain flashed past Qin Yojiao's eyes. Of course, she knew that Yuling ordered her pursuers around all day long. She was clearly dating Fu Yanbai, but she declared to the public that she was not in a relationship. Qin Yojiao hid her surprise and took it to listen to the source of the music. However, a few minutes later, Qin Yojiao's face darkened. Qin Yojiao knew that Bei Yunj probably knew how to arrange music, but she did not take it seriously. After all, she had stayed abroad for more than a year in the International Musicians Association and studied day and night every day. Her ability should be better than Bei Yunj's. Therefore, she never thought that Bei Yunj's work could be compared to hers. However, at this moment, the truth was thrown ruthlessly in her face, making her heart tremble and filled with pain and hatred. How was this possible? What right did she have? Bei Yunj used to be so uneasy that her hands would tremble when playing the piano, but now, she was playing the score she wrote and crushing her effortlessly. Is this the score written by Bei Yunj? Qin Yojiao asked through gritted teeth. Yuling didn't look too good either. However, before Yuling could speak, someone at the door suddenly exclaimed in surprise. Yojiao, who wrote this score? The person who spoke was a famous professor in Qin Yojiao's department. He was also one of the few members of the musical alliance in the country. Qin Yojiao's expression turned ugly. She did not expect her professor to overhear her. She pursed her lips and said, a friend of mine. Your friend? Was he old? The level of this score doesn't sound like something your peers could have written. The professor's words were like a slap that landed ruthlessly on Qin Yojiao's face. Yuling furrowed her eyebrows. She did not expect Qin Yojiao to not even have this ability. She couldn't even compete with Bei Yunj. But why do I feel that this song sounds familiar? Yuling's casual words made Qin Yojiao extremely agitated. She turned around abruptly. What did you say? Have you heard of it somewhere before? Yuling was shocked before she said slowly, I think it's a female singer who has been quite popular recently. The popularity of her new song is almost comparable to Manrin's. Your friend copied such a good song. The professor frowned as a layer of coldness and disgust appeared in his eyes. However, Qin Yojiao could not suppress her excitement and started to investigate the singer Yuling was talking about. P.S. Continue reading in the morning. Chapter 1280. The singer Yuling was talking about was called Fang Shiyun. She was an artiste who had suddenly become popular in the past 6 months. Coincidentally, Qin Yojiao also knew Fang Shiyun. This was her junior from the music class. Qin Yojiao's expression changed slightly, feeling very surprised and upset. She remembered that Fang Shiyun did not have any musical talent at all and was the least outstanding one in the music class. She was just a little pretty. But it had only been a few years since they last met. How could Fang Shiyun write such a song? How is it? Isn't it very similar? Yuling asked Qin Yojiao. However, the professor frowned. Yojiao, no matter who your friend is, you should remind her early not to do such a thing. At such a young age, do you really have to ruin your reputation and ruin your reputation? Qin Yojiao immediately laughed. Professor, don't worry. I'll tell her. The professor nodded. Ever since he found out that such a perfect score was actually plagiarized, his expression had also darkened. Young people nowadays were really too ambitious. However, after Qin Yojiao left, Yuling could not suppress her excitement as she said, since Bei Yunj plagiarized, why don't we expose her now? She couldn't wait to see Pei Yunj and Song Yao being hated by everyone like rats on the street. Yuling's eyes were filled with unwillingness and resentment. Ever since she returned, Fu Yanbai had not treated her as well as before. A few days ago, she had even found a 1-inch photo of Song Yao in Fu Yanbai's book. This made Yuling feel a sense of danger. Fu Yanbai already felt guilty towards Song Yao, and now, he was clearly even more interested in Song Yao. She would never allow Song Yao, who had once been trampled under her feet, to turn around and win against her. Hearing this, a cold smile appeared in Qin Yojiao's eyes as she glanced at Yuling. She really did not know how Fu Yanbai took a fancy to such an idiot. There's no hurry. Qin Yojiao put away the USB drive and said calmly. What do you mean there's no hurry? Don't you want Bei Yunj's reputation to be ruined? Yuling frowned. Qin Yojiao's tone was mocking. How is exposing her now considered ruining her reputation? She laughed, the coldness and malice in her eyes intertwined. Just watch. On the day of the banquet, let's see how Bei Yunj will be humiliated. This time, she would definitely avenge herself. For several days in a row, Bei Yunj stayed in the laboratory and occasionally went to watch Song Yao and Lu Yuanxi rehearse. I'll wait for you at the door. When Bei Yunj saw Huashida's message, it was already half an hour later. Yunj, look at this data. Before Si Qingyan could finish speaking, Pei Yunj suddenly took off her white coat. She only said a few words before she ran away in a hurry. Something came up, Brother Yan. You play by yourself. Si Qingyan, who was watching Bei Yunj leave, was speechless. What do you mean by play? Wasn't he looking down on his project too much? However, Si Qingyan was also very curious. Who had Bei Yunj received a message from? She actually left so quickly. When she ran downstairs, Bei Yunj's breathing was slightly chaotic and a small tuft of her short hair stood up messily. Before she could take off her mask and look around for the man's back, someone suddenly grabbed her hand around the corner. Before Bei Yunj could react, she was grabbed by the waist and pressed behind the corner. The moment she looked up, her eyes met with the man's smiling upturned eyes. They were very charming. Why are you here? Before Bei Yunj could go out, she was pulled back. End of this chapter. Chapter 1281. Bei Yunj bumped straight back into the man's chest. What are you doing? Bei Yunja's eyelids twitched as she looked up at the man with a sloppy expression. Didn't Yunyan not allow me to appear in school? The man tidied Bei Yunja's messy hair with one hand. Suddenly, he leaned over casually and smiled frivolously. Bei Yunj suddenly felt that Huashidu was holding her hand. The atmosphere and the other party's body temperature made her feel a secret intimacy and excitement. It made her inexplicably happy, and her heart beat faster. She crossed her fingers ambiguously. Then do you want to have a secret affair with brother? Bei Yunj met the man's gaze, but it was as if she was scalded by his gaze. She quickly looked away. Her heart was beating like a drum. Huashidu also felt that he had teased her too much just now. As a result, the child with red ears beside him walked without looking up. He did not even look at him. But suddenly, there were more discussions around them. Is this a senior from our school? He's too handsome. Isn't this Bei Yunj from the physics department? Could it be that this little brother is the senior from Beichuan who was photographed with Bei Yunj last time? Impossible. Beichuan isn't that handsome, okay? Then, is this the boyfriend of the top scorer's father? The people around them were discussing animatedly. There were also little girls whose eyes were sparkling, looking eager to try. Bei Yunj pursed her red lips unconsciously. Before the others could react, she grabbed the man's hand and walked forward quickly. Huashidu raised his eyebrows and curled his thin red lips. Yun, be gentler to me. As soon as he finished speaking, the girls around them could not hold back their excitement and almost screamed softly. This was too suave. Bei Yunj, was this D*MN man selling his smile? In public, he was seducing people just because he was good-looking? Huashidu still did not know that his child had been unhappy for a long time because of his pair of naturally affectionate peach blossom eyes. At this moment, the others also realized that the big boss of the physics department was declaring his sovereignty, and the people around him were no longer infatuated. However, she inexplicably felt that the way this big boss expressionlessly held the man's hand was a natural contrast adorable. Even the boss has a proud moment. However, not long after, when Bei Yunj was holding the man's hand, she suddenly saw a familiar middle-aged man in front of them. But she seemed to have never seen it before. 2 minutes later, Bei Yunj suddenly realized from the original protagonist's memory that this was Cheng Zihuai's father. Bei Yunj didn't know if it was because the original owner's consciousness was still there, but she subconsciously froze. Although Cheng Zihuai's mother hated Bei Yunj and schemed against Bei Yunj with Qin Youjiao, Cheng Zihuai's father treated Bei Yunj as his biological daughter. Even the marriage between the original owner and Cheng Zihuai was facilitated by Father Cheng. Therefore, in front of Father Cheng, Bei Yunj actually felt guilty for eloping with someone. Beside her, Huashidu also felt that something was wrong with Bei Yunj. What's wrong? Bei Yunj said, the person in front is Cheng Zihuai's father. Hearing this, the corners of Huashidu's lazy upturned eyes raised slightly as his gaze landed on Bei Yunj calmly. He remembered that this child had been engaged to the Cheng family before. Seeing Bei Yunj's guilty expression, the man licked his thin red lips and snorted silently. Then, Bei Yunj saw Father Cheng walking over and turned to leave instinctively. You're tuning in to the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.